ability.
2023.
Now think about a
Mom's
typical
funeral.
American home today.
But the story really
Turn off your
starts 2
heating
years
when
before
it's 10
that.
degrees
Mom was
Fahrenheit outside.
diagnosed with
In
stage 4
We've
pancreatic
lost
cancer
something
on
critical
March
in
17th,
modern construction.
2021.
Back
She was
in
82 years
1869,
old. The doctor
engineers
said
studied
6
the
months,
Hedel-Stave Church
maybe 8
in
if we were
Norway
lucky.
during a
She
record-breaking
lasted
winter.
30 months.
The temperature outside
That's the
had
kind of
dropped to
woman Eleanor
minus
Chung
35
was.
degrees
Stubborn,
Fahrenheit.
fighter,
Snow
never
covered
gave up on
everything for
anything.
miles.
I was living in
Winds tore
Sacramento
through
at
the
the
mountains
time,
with enough
about
power
90
to
miles
destroy
from Mom's
any
place in
modern
Fresno.
tent.
I
But
retired
inside
from the
this
fire
timber
department
church
3
constructed in
years earlier
1150
after
without
32
any heating
years of
system,
service.
without
My pension
insulation,
was decent.
and without
Not
modern
rich,
windows,
but
the
comfortable.
temperature
My
remained
wife
at
Linda
48
and I had
degrees
just paid off our
Fahrenheit.
mortgage.
No
Life
fire
was
was
good.
lit.
Karen lived
No energy
in
was
San
being
Diego.
consumed.
She was
The
a
building
real estate
itself,
agent.
constructed
Divorced
from
twice.
dense timber using
Had
forgotten
one
techniques,
daughter,
maintained
Jessica,
thermal
who was
stability.
29
Now
and
think
worked
about a
as a
typical
social
American
media
home today.
consultant, which
Turn
as
off
far
your
as I could
heating
tell meant
when
she
it's
took
10
pictures
degrees
of herself
Fahrenheit
for
outside.
Instagram.
In
Karen
just 4
and I had
hours,
never been close.
your indoor temperature
Even as
plummets
kids,
below
she was
40
always
degrees
the one who'd
Fahrenheit.
steal
Within
cookies
8
and
hours,
blame David.
you're approaching
The
freezing.
one who'd forged
After
Dad's
18
signature on
hours,
permission slips.
you risk frozen
Mom
pipes
used to
and
say
structural
Karen had
damage.
creative
The
problem
house
solving
becomes
skills.
dangerous.
I should have paid
What
more
knowledge
attention to
did
that.
ancient builders
When Mom got
possess
the
that we've
diagnosis,
abandoned?
I drove
Across
down
the
to
Nordic
Fresno that
mountains,
same day.
hundreds of
Got
timber
there around
structures from the
7
12th
p.m.
to 16th
Mom was sitting
centuries
in her
remain
kitchen,
intact
the
today.
same kitchen
These
where she
buildings
made us
have
breakfast
lasted
for
through
50
centuries
years,
of punishment.
and she was crying.
They've withstood
Not
winters
sobbing,
that would
just
destroy a
quiet
contemporary
tears running
frame
down her
house in
face.
mere weeks.
It's okay, Mom.
They accomplished
I said,
this
holding her
using
hand.
3 fundamental
No, baby,
principles
it's
completely
not.
absent
She
from
looked
modern
at
building
me
codes:
with those sharp
thermal
brown
mass
eyes
storage,
that had caught
complete
me
air
in every
sealing,
lie
and heating
I'd ever
systems
told.
designed
I'm
around
not
energy
ready.
storage
I have
rather
things
than
to do.
constant fuel burning.
Like what? Like
These
make sure
weren't
you
separate
kids are
trips.
taken care of.
They worked
Make sure
together as
everything
one
is
integrated
fair.
system.
That word.
Pure physics
Fair.
applied correctly,
I'd hear it a lot
working
over the next 2
alongside
years.
natural forces
Karen showed up
instead
2
of
days
fighting them.
later.
Today's
Flew in from
construction
San
fights
Diego,
against basic
rented a car,
thermodynamics.
showed up in a
We
designer
combat
dress
cold with
and heels
endless
like she
energy
was going to a
input,
cocktail party,
and we're failing
not
badly.
visiting our dying
Before we
mother.
continue,
Michael,
leave a comment
she said,
below.
air kissing
Have
near my
you
cheek.
experienced a
You
winter
look
power
tired.
outage?
I've been
How
here
long
helping
did your
Mom.
home retain heat?
Of course you have.
2 hours,
She
8
smiled.
hours,
Saint
or
Michael.
was it
Always the
freezing
good
within
son.
minutes?
I'll let it go.
Share your story,
Mom was dying.
because what
Family
comes
drama
next will
could
transform your
That first
understanding
night,
of modern
the
buildings.
3 of us sat
Let's
in
go
Mom's
back
living room.
to 2012.
Mom was in her
Researchers
recliner,
at the
the
Technical
one Dad had
University
bought
of
her for
Norway
their 40th
conducted a
anniversary
fascinating
before his
test.
heart attack
They
took
used
him in
2 identical
2015.
sized structures,
Karen and I were on
each
the couch.
approximately
I
400
want to talk
square
about practical
feet.
things.
Structure
Mom
1
said.
was an
Well, I
authentic
still
medieval
can't.
timber cabin
Mom,
built
don't.
to
I
13th
started.
century
Hush.
specifications.
This is important.
Solid
She
timber
pulled out a
logs
folder.
measuring 11
I
inches
updated
in
mine
diameter,
last year.
hand-fitted
Everything
with
is
precision
split
joinery.
equally between you two.
Zero modern
The house,
insulation.
my
No
savings, my
plastic
life
barriers.
insurance.
No
All of
synthetic
it.
materials
50
whatsoever.
to 50.
Structure
That's
2
not necessary
was a
right
contemporary
now, Karen said,
prefabricated
but I
dwelling
saw
built
her
to
eyes
current strict
flicker to the
energy
folder.
regulations.
It's very
Heavy
necessary.
insulation rated
Mom's
R
hand
23.
shook slightly
Multiple
as she
vapor
held up a
barriers.
paper. The
Triple
house is
pane
paid
windows.
off. It's worth
On
about
any building inspector's
$650,000 in this
The
market.
modern structure
My savings
dominated
account
completely.
has
Both sat in the
$380,000.
same location.
I have
External
a life insurance
temperature,
policy through
minus
Dad's
12
union.
degrees Fahrenheit.
$750,
Both were warmed to a
000.
comfortable 70
There's
degrees
also my
Fahrenheit.
pension, which
Then
stops
researchers
when I die,
shut down
and
all
about
heating.
$20,000
The contemporary
in checking
house
account
dropped
for
to
final
32
expenses and
degrees
bills.
Fahrenheit
I did
in
the
just
math.
7 hours.
About
The timber
$1.8
cabin,
million
after
total.
48 hours,
Split 2 ways,
internal temperature held at
$900,000
56
each.
degrees
I didn't
Fahrenheit.
care about the money.
After
I cared
72
about Mom.
hours,
But
3
Karen
complete
was
days
leaning
with
forward,
zero heat
paying
input,
attention.
it
I've
still
also named
measured
you both as
45 degrees
co-executives.
Fahrenheit,
Mom
safely
continued.
above freezing.
You'll need to work together.
The modern building
Can you
had
do that?
become a
Of
potentially
course,
lethal
Karen
freezer,
said
while the
immediately.
ancient cabin
Sure, Mom,
remained
I agree.
completely habitable.
Mom looked at us
How
for
is
a
this
long
possible?
moment.
A
Promise me
typical
something.
engineer today
Promise
would
me you'll
call this
take care of
result
each other.
impossible.
David is gone.
The timber cabins
Her voice
are value
cracked.
sits around
Even
9.
7 years later,
The contemporary
talking
house
about
boasts
David Herter.
are
You
23.
two are all that's
Higher
left of
our
this
value
family.
equals superior
Promise me
insulation
you
by
won't
definition.
let money tear you
The
apart.
modern house
I
should
promise,
dominate this
I
test,
said.
right?
Me too.
But our
Karen
value
said. said.
only accounts
Mom
for
nodded.
heat
I'm
transfer
going to keep
under
the
steady
original
conditions.
will with my lawyer.
It completely
Robert
disregards
Forrest.
thermal mass.
You both have his number.
And thermal
When the time
mass
comes,
changes
he'll
everything
handle
fundamentally.
everything.
An
Fair
11-inch
and square.
thick wall
The
of
way I want
old-growth
it.
spruce
Fair
weighs
and square.
approximately
3 months
75
later,
pounds per
Mom
linear
couldn't
foot.
walk without
Wood
help.
possesses
6
exceptional
months later,
specific heat
she was in
capacity,
a hospital bed
allowing
we'd
it to
set
store
up in the
tremendous
living room.
amounts of
The
thermal
hospice
energy.
nurse, a
When
kind
you
woman
heat the
named
cabin,
Teresa,
the
came
timber
3
absorbs
times a
that
week.
warmth deep
I'd
into
moved
its
in with
cellular
Mom.
structure.
Linda understood.
When heating stops,
She'd visit on
the
weekends,
wood releases this
but during the
stored
week,
energy
I slept in my
gradually over
old
many
childhood
hours
bedroom
and
and took
even
care of Mom.
days.
changed
In the
her
contemporary
sheets,
house,
helped her to the bathroom,
walls consist of thin
fed her
drywall,
when she could eat,
plastic sheeting,
held her hand when the
fiberglass
pain was
insulation,
bad.
and
Karen
exterior
visited once a
cladding.
month.
Total wall
Maybe
assembly weight,
she'd stay for a weekend,
maybe 8
make a
pounds
show
per
of
linear
fluffing
foot.
pillows,
There's
then
essentially
fly
zero
back to
mass
San
available for
Diego.
heat storage.
I have clients, she
Insulation
explained.
slows heat
I
escape.
can't just abandon my
Sure,
business.
but it stores
Fine.
absolutely
I was
nothing.
there. That's
The
what
moment
mattered.
your furnace
But
cycles
something
off,
started changing
warmth in
around
the air
month
escapes
8.
through
Mom
microscopic
started
gaps
asking about
and
money.
thermal bridges.
Michael, did I
Because
pay the
stick frame
electric bill?
construction has no
Yes,
thermal
Mom.
mass,
Last week.
there's no
What
energy
about
reservoir
property
to
taxes?
sustain
All
interior
paid.
temperature.
Don't worry.
Ancient
The
builders
life
grasped
insurance.
this principle
Did I make the
intuitively.
premium?
They
It's
selected
automatic
trees
from your
aged
account,
70
Mom.
to 90
It's fine.
years minimum.
But she'd ask again the
Trees
next
growing
day,
in
and
harsh
the day after.
northern climates
Like she
develop
couldn't remember.
extremely slowly.
But like something was
Growth
worrying
rings
her.
pack incredibly
One afternoon
tight,
in November
sometimes
2021,
exceeding
about
120
8 months
rings
after
per
the
inch.
diagnosis,
This
Mom
creates
grabbed my wrist
extraordinarily
while I was
dense,
giving her medication.
heavy timber.
Michael,
1
listen
cubic
to me.
foot of
I'm
old-growth
listening,
spruce weighs
Mom.
over 40 pounds.
If anything
Modern
happens to me,
fast-growth
if I
pine,
get confused,
26
if I
pounds.
can't think straight
That
anymore,
density
you need
matters
to watch
enormously.
Karen. My stomach
Greater
dropped.
mass equals
What do you mean?
greater storage
Just watch her.
capacity.
Please.
More storage
She's not like
means
you.
extended
She's
thermal
always
lag
been.
time. It
Mom
requires
searched for the
10
word.
to 16 hours for external
Opportunistic.
cold to
Mom,
penetrate
don't
an
worry
11-inch dense timber
Promise
wall.
me. I
By that
promise.
time,
She
you've
relaxed
typically
back
restarted
into her
your heat
pillows.
source.
Good.
The cabin
Good.
functions
I
like
should have
a
understood
massive
what she
thermal
was telling
battery,
me. I didn't.
eliminating temperature
November
fluctuations.
turned into December.
But mass
Mom
alone
rallied
isn't
a bit
sufficient.
during Christmas.
You also need
We had a
complete
small
air
celebration.
sealing. This
Me,
reveals the second
Linda,
crucial secret.
Karen,
Despite
Jessica,
all our
and a few
advanced
of
house
Mom's
wraps
oldest
and
friends from
ceiling
church.
tapes,
Mom was
contemporary
weak,
homes
but happy.
leak like sieves.
She kept saying it might
Blower
be her
door
last
testing
Christmas.
reveals the average
It
modern
wasn't.
house has
She made it
cumulative
through
air
New
leakage
Year's,
equivalent
then
to leaving a
Valentine's
22
Day,
by
then
18-inch
Easter.
window
Your mother
completely
is
open.
a fighter.
This isn't
Teresa, the
hyperbole.
hospice nurse,
Combine
said
every
in
gap
April
around
2022.
electrical boxes,
I've never
trim
seen
work,
someone hang
and
on
window
this
frames.
long with her diagnosis.
That's the hole you're trying to heat.
She's stubborn.
When it's
I
0
said.
degrees outside,
She's lucky to have you.
frigid air
I didn't
pours
feel
through
lucky.
continuously.
I felt exhausted.
Your heating system
Watching
isn't
someone
battling
you
the
love
walls.
die slowly
It's fighting
is
an
like
invisible
drowning
open
in
portal.
slow motion.
The timber
Every
cabins
day,
eliminated
a little bit
this
harder
problem.
To breathe.
Logs
That
were
same
joined
month,
using
April
scribe-fit joinery.
2022,
Each
Karen
log
asked
was
to talk to me
individually shaped
privately.
to
We
perfectly
stood
match the
outside
log
on Mom's
beneath it.
front porch.
This
It
process
was a
took
warm
weeks of
evening,
skilled labor.
the kind of Central
A single
California
room
spring
could require
that
months
makes you
to
forget
complete.
summer
But
is
the
coming to
outcome was
bake
a wall
everything
assembly
brown.
with
I'm worried
virtually
about
no
Mom's
air infiltration.
finances, Karen
Then
said.
came the chinking
Why?
process.
Everything's handled.
Gaps were
But
filled
is
with
it?
sphagnum
Michael,
moss harvested
you're
from
not
wetlands.
good with money.
This
You're a
moss absorbs
firefighter,
up to
not an
25
accountant.
times its weight
That
in
stung.
moisture.
I can
When
balance a
dried
checkbook,
and compressed, it
I'm not
expands
saying
into
you can't.
every tiny crack.
I'm saying this is
Over
complicated.
this, builders
Healthcare
applied a
costs,
mixture of clay blended
medications,
with animal
property
fiber,
taxes,
typically wool
utilities.
or goat hair.
It adds up.
The clay
I think I
hardens
should
to
help.
create an
Help
airtight
how?
seal while
Let
the
me handle
fiber
Mom's
acts
accounts.
like reinforcement
I deal with
to prevent
money
cracking.
all time in real
It's a
estate.
breathing system.
I can make sure
Water
everything is
vapor can
organized,
migrate through,
paid on time,
but air movement
properly
cannot
tracked.
occur.
Something
When
felt
scientists
wrong.
test
I
these
couldn't name it, but it was
500-year-old
there.
structures today,
Mom's lawyer
many
handles the
achieve
important
or
stuff.
surpass
I
modern
said,
passive
and
house
I've got the
airtightness
day-to-day
standards.
covered.
A dwelling
Karen's
constructed
smile
with
tightened.
hand tools
I'm
and
just trying to
natural
help,
moss
Michael.
outperforms
But
a suburban
fine.
home
If you want
built
to be
with
stubborn about it,
engineered composites.
I'm not being stubborn.
The third critical
Whatever
element
you say.
is the heating
She went
strategy
back
itself.
inside.
This
I
is
stood
where
on that
things
porch
get
for another
truly
10 minutes,
fascinating.
watching the
We
sun
typically
set,
imagine old
wondering
cabins
why
with
the
open
conversation
fireplaces,
felt like a trap
but open
I barely
fireplaces
avoided.
are
2
thermal
weeks later,
catastrophes.
Karen brought it
They
up again.
pull enormous
This time in
volumes
front
of
of
heated
Mom.
indoor
Mom,
air and
I really
blast
think we
it
should
straight up the
consolidate
chimney.
your accounts.
A big open
Make
fire
things
can actually
easier.
cool a
I
house
could add my
by
name to your
creating
checking,
negative air pressure.
help pay bills.
Instead,
Mom looked at her,
Scandinavians use
then at me.
masonry heaters
Michael
called
handles it,
K-Cloven or
but Michael
soapstone
lives
stoves.
90 miles away.
These are
What if
substantial
something
units
urgent comes
constructed
up?
from
What
stone
if you
or
need
brick,
something and he's
weighing
not
multiple
here?
tons.
He's here every day.
You burn an intense,
Mom said quietly.
fast fire once
Still,
or twice
it would be
daily.
smart to have a backup.
Combustion
just
is
in
complete
case.
and efficient.
I was about to object
but
when
instead
Mom
of exhaust
said,
gases exiting
"Okay."
directly,
My
they
heart dropped.
wind through a maze
Okay.
of channels within
Karen
the stone
smiled.
mass.
Really?
Heat
Just a
transfers
checking
to the
account.
stone before
For
gases
bills.
reach the
Nothing
chimney.
else.
By the time
Mom's voice
smoke
was
exits
firm,
outside,
and Michael stays
it's
on
barely
it too.
above ambient
Both of you.
temperature.
Of course,
All that that
Karen
thermal
said
energy
quickly.
is captured
That's
in
all
the
I meant.
stone.
Just to
This
help.
stone
The
mass
next
then
day,
radiates
Karen
warmth
drove Mom
steadily
to the bay.
for 10 to
I
16
offered
hours.
to go,
The
but
surface
Karen
temperature
said,
stays around
"You've done enough.
135
Let me
to
handle this."
170
They were
degrees
gone
Fahrenheit.
for 2 hours.
Warm enough
When they
to
came
feel
back,
comfortable,
Mom looked
but
tired,
safe for
more
direct
tired
contact.
than usual.
You can
Everything
sit against
okay?
it,
I
You
asked.
can even sleep
Fine.
beside it.
Mom
The
said,
heat is
but she
radiant,
wouldn't look at me.
meaning it
That
warms
night,
objects
after
and
Mom
bodies,
fell asleep,
not merely
I
the
checked
air.
her bank statements
Radiant
online.
heating
I had
creates
the login
comfort at
information.
lower air temperatures.
Mom had given it to me
You
months
feel
ago.
comfortable in
The checking
58
account
degrees
showed
Fahrenheit
Karen
air
had been added
if you're
as
near
a
a
joint owner.
155
That was
degrees
expected.
Fahrenheit
But
stone
something else
mass.
caught my eye.
A
There had
contemporary
been a
forced air
transfer.
system must heat air to
$50,000
70
from Mom's
degrees
savings
Fahrenheit
account
to
to her
achieve the
checking
same
account.
comfort level.
That afternoon,
That
while
represents
Karen and Mom were
massive
at the
energy
bank,
waste.
I stared at the
A
screen.
Swedish study
Why
from
would they move
2005
$50,000
reconstructed a
to
traditional
checking?
log dwelling
Mom's monthly
and tested it
expenses
at
were
minus
maybe
18 degrees
$4,000.
Fahrenheit.
And that
A
included
single
everything.
90-minute fire using
Healthcare,
approximately
utilities,
40 pounds of wood
food,
maintained
property
interior
taxes.
temperatures
Even
above
with medicine
57
costs,
degrees
we
Fahrenheit
didn't need
for over
anywhere
14
near
hours.
$50,000
Fuel
in
consumption
the
was
checking
roughly
account.
1/12
I told
what a
myself it
modern
was
home
fine.
with gas heating
Maybe
would
Mom wanted
consume in
cushion.
the same time
Maybe
frame.
Karen suggested
And
it
this
for
was
safety.
achieved
Maybe I
without
was being
any modern
paranoid.
insulation
But
technology.
Mom's voice echoed
Just
in my
thermal
head.
mass,
Watch
air
Karen.
sealing, and
3
radiant
days
heat
later,
working together.
I checked the account again.
Interior layout also played a
$15,000
massive
was
role
gone
in
from checking.
efficiency.
Just gone.
Scandinavian
I called Karen
cabins
immediately.
rejected open
Hey,
concept
Michael,
design.
what's up?
Modern open
There's
floor plans are
$15,000
efficiency
missing from
nightmares.
Mom's checking
Heated
account.
air rises
Pause.
and gets trapped
Oh,
in
that.
high ceilings
Yeah.
while
Mom
occupants
asked me to
freeze
pay
at
some
floor
bills.
level.
What bills
Medieval
cost
cabins featured low
$15,000?
ceilings, typically
Medical
just
expenses.
6.5 feet
You know
high.
how it is.
Rooms were small
Copays,
and separated by
medications,
solid
that specialist
doors.
consultation
This
in
concentrated heat,
February. It
where
adds up.
people actually
I have
spent
receipts
time.
for all of that.
The central
It was
room for
maybe
cooking and daily
$3,000
activities
total.
stayed
Well,
warmest.
there are other things.
Sleeping rooms were cooler,
Look, Michael,
which
I'm
didn't
handling
matter
it.
because
You don't need
people
to worry
slept under
about
heavy wool
every
blankets
single
and
transaction.
furs. This
I'm
thermal
not
zoning
worried about
strategy
every
drastically
transaction.
reduced
I'm
heating
worried about
requirements.
$15,000
There was zero need to
disappearing.
maintain and
Her
use
voice got
spaces
cold.
at
Are you
68
accusing me
degrees
of something?
Fahrenheit.
I'm
We've
asking you to
completely
explain.
discarded this logic
I don't
in
have
our
to explain
obsession with
anything to you.
expansive great
I am
rooms.
so executor.
Then consider
I
the
have
foundation
just as
approach.
much right to handle
Many
Mom's
modern
money
American
as you do.
homes sit
Actually,
on
I
slab-on
have
grade
more right
concrete.
because at least I understand
Concrete
finances.
functions as a thermal
Karen,
bridge.
I've
It
got to
pulls
go.
heat from your
I have
living
a client.
space and dumps
She
it
hung up.
straight into
I
frozen
sat there
ground.
holding the phone.
Scandinavian
my hands shaking.
cabins were
That
elevated
night,
on
I asked
stone
Mom
piers
about it.
that lifted
Mom,
timber off the
did
earth.
you ask Karen to
This
pay
created an air gap functioning
$15,000
as
in bills?
insulation.
Mom
Floors
looked
consisted
confused.
of thick planks,
What bills?
often
That's what I'm
double-layered with
asking.
sawdust
I don't-
or moss
I don't
packed
remember.
between.
She
This
pressed her
eliminated the
hand
thermal
to her
bridge
forehead.
completely.
The pain
No heat
medication
bled into the
makes
ground below.
everything fuzzy.
Every design
It's
detail
okay, Mom.
focused
Don't worry
on
about
heat
it.
retention.
But I was worried.
So why
a
did we
lot.
abandon these
Over the next
proven
3
methods?
weeks, I
3
watched the
primary
account
reasons:
like a hawk.
speed,
Another
cost, and cheap
$8,000
fossil fuels.
disappeared.
After
Then
World War II,
$12,000.
we needed
Then
millions of houses
$20,000.
immediately.
Every time I
Scribing
called
logs
Karen,
and
she had an
hand-cutting
explanation.
joints required
Medical
months.
bills.
Stick
Property
framing with
taxes
dimensional
paid
lumber
early.
and plywood
Investment
took only
opportunities
weeks.
she was setting
Labor
up for
costs
Mom.
were high,
Home repairs
so
that
materials
needed
needed
to
to
be
be
done before
inexpensive.
Mom died. So the house
Thin
would
walls
sell
with
for
that
more.
insulation
None of it
cost
made
far
sense.
less than solid
I
timber.
called Mom's lawyer,
Then came the
Robert
energy
Flores.
revolution.
Mr. Flores,
During the
this
1950s
is
and
Michael
60s,
Chung.
oil
Idiano
and
Heson.
natural gas were
Michael, of
incredibly
course.
cheap. Who
How's your
cared
mother?
about efficiency
Hanging in there.
when you could
Listen,
simply turn up
I have
the
a question
thermostat?
about her accounts.
We stopped
My
designing
sister
for
Karen was
resilience
added to
and
the
started
checking account.
optimizing for
And there's been
lowest
some
initial
unusual
cost.
activity.
We created houses
Large
on life
withdrawals.
support,
How large?
requiring constant
About
energy input.
$55,000
Cut the
in 3
supply,
weeks.
and they fail
Silence.
immediately. But
Mr.
energy
Flores?
costs have
That is
skyrocketed.
concerning.
Power
However,
grids are becoming
if your mother
increasingly
authorized Karen to
unstable.
be on the account,
People are
and if
realizing
Karen
their
is
expensive
using it for your
homes
mother's
are actually
expenses,
extremely
there's
fragile.
not much I could do
Throughout
legally
Europe,
unless we could
particularly
prove
in Germany,
impropriety.
Austria,
What if the
and
expenses
Switzerland,
aren't real?
there's a
Do you have
significant
proof?
movement
I
returning
didn't.
to solid
Not
timber
yet.
construction
Then
and
my
mass
advice
timber
is
technology.
to document everything.
This is a nostalgia.
Keep records.
It's applied physics.
Bank statements,
Architects are
receipts,
merging
any
traditional timber
communication with your
principles
sister
with
about the money.
contemporary technology.
If this goes somewhere we don't
Thick
want to go,
cross-laminated timber
you'll
panels,
need evidence.
masonry heaters,
You think
and
she's stealing
intelligent
from Mom?
compact layouts.
I think you should watch
They're
the accounts
achieving
very
dramatic
carefully.
reductions in
There's
energy
that word
consumption.
again.
A
Watch.
properly
I
constructed
started keeping
solid
a
timber
spreadsheet.
home can
Every
operate on
withdrawal,
1/3 the
every
energy of
transfer, I
conventional
wrote it
construction.
down. Date,
And when
amount,
power fails,
Karen's
it
explanation
remains
if she
livable
gave
for
one.
multiple days.
By June 2022,
Scientific research
3
supports
months
these
after
claims
Karen got
completely.
access to the
A
checking
2019
account,
study by the University
$127,000
of
was
Innsbruck Brooke
gone.
monitored
I
solid
confronted her
timber
again,
houses versus
this time
conventional
face to
builds over
face.
5 years.
She'd flown up for
The
a
timber
visit,
homes
staying at
consumed
a hotel
38%
instead of at
less
Mom's
heating
house,
energy during
because
winter.
the medical
In
equipment
summer,
makes it hard
they
to
required
sleep.
no air
We met for
conditioning
coffee
because
at a
thermal mass
Starbucks near
buffered
Mom's
heat gain.
house. You've
Residents
taken
reported fewer drafts and
$127,000,
superior indoor air
I said.
quality. With
Sliding a
naturally
printed
moderate
copy of my
humidity,
spreadsheet across
absorbing
the table.
excess
Karen
moisture when
glanced at it.
damp and
Is this what
releasing
you've
it
been
when
doing
dry.
with your time?
No mold
Making
problems.
spreadsheets about me.
No
Answer the
dry air
question.
issues.
I haven't
No
taken
noisy
anything.
mechanical
I've been managing
humidifiers
mom's
needed.
expenses.
And there's another
she asked
factor
me
we
to.
rarely discuss:
Show me the receipts.
longevity.
I don't
A
have to show you
contemporary
anything.
house begins
Yes, you do.
deteriorating the
We're
moment construction
co-executors.
finishes.
That means
Vapor barriers
transparency.
tear.
She laughed.
Fiberglass settles
Actually laughed.
and loses
Michael,
effectiveness.
you're so out of your
Framing
depth here.
lumber rots
You
when
think you
moisture
understand how
penetrates
money
behind
works
siding.
because you paid
After
a mortgage
25
for
years,
30 years.
you're facing
You
major
have no
renovation
idea
expenses.
how to manage wealth.
Scandinavian
This isn't
timber
wealth
cabins have
management.
endured
This
for
is
500
theft.
years.
Her eyes went
As
hard.
timber settles
Be
during
very
the first
careful
few
what you
years,
accuse me of.
joints
Or what?
actually become tighter.
I'll make sure
A
Mom knows you're
40-year-old
harassing
log
me.
home
Do you want to
often
stress her
performs
out in her
better
final
than
months?
a brand new
Make
one.
her last days
It's
about
an
your
asset
paranoia.
that improves
That
with
hit me
age,
like a punch.
while
This
modern
isn't
construction
paranoia.
depreciates
Isn't
from
it?
day one.
She stood up.
If you're planning
done
to
with this
build or
conversation.
renovate a home
If you
today
can't
for
trust me,
resilience,
that's your problem.
efficiency, and
But I'm
longevity,
doing what's best for Mom,
adopt these principles.
which is more than I can say
You don't
for
need
you
to live in
sitting
a medieval
around
structure,
counting
but
pennies
you
like
can
Scrooge.
incorporate thermal mass.
She walked out.
Investigate
there for a
mass
long
timber or
time,
solid log
staring at my
construction
spreadsheet,
options.
feeling
If solid
helpless.
timber walls
When I
aren't
got
feasible,
back to Mom's house,
integrate
she was
stone
awake,
mass internally.
sitting up in her bed.
A masonry
Michael,
heater
come
or
here.
substantial
I
stone
sat in the chair
fireplace
next to
surround
her.
can serve
Are
as
you
your thermal
and Karen
battery.
fighting?
Prioritize
No,
complete
Mom,
air sealing.
everything's fine.
Invest
Don't lie
in
to me.
professional blower
I'm
door
dying,
testing
not
and
stupid.
seal
Her
every
hand
leak
found mine.
meticulously.
What's wrong?
This delivers
I couldn't
more
tell her.
value than
I
adding
couldn't
extra
add that
insulation
stress
layers.
to her dying days.
Design for compactness.
Just sibling stuff? I
Eliminate
said,
cathedral
we'll work
ceilings
it out.
if efficiency
Mom studied
matters
my
to you.
face.
Lower
She's taking
ceilings
money.
and closable
Isn't
rooms
she?
concentrate
My breath
heat
caught.
where you actually
Mom,
are.
I'm not as
Implement
out of it as
thermal
everyone
zoning
thinks.
strategies.
I see the
Heat
bank
your living
statements when they
spaces
come.
actively.
I see
Allow
numbers that don't
sleeping
make
areas
sense.
to remain
Her
cooler.
grip tightened.
And think long-term
much?
value.
Mom,
A house
don't worry
costing
about this.
$60,000
How
more
much,
to construct,
Michael?
but
About
saving you $120,000
$127,000
in utilities and
She closed her
maintenance
eyes.
over 30
One
years
tear
is the
rolled down her
intelligent
cheek.
investment.
I'm
Modern
sorry.
building codes
For
obsess
what?
over
For
our
not
values
protecting you
and
from her.
upfront construction
For not
costs.
seeing it sooner.
They
For
completely
being
ignore
weak.
resilience
You're not
and
weak.
life cycle value.
You're the strongest
The
person I
Scandinavian
know.
farmer in his
Then why can't I
13th
stop
century
her?
cabin
Her
wasn't
voice
primitive
broke.
or backward.
It's my money.
He was a
My
master
life
of
savings.
practical physics.
And I can't even
He
protect
understood
it
that
because
heat
I can
requires
barely
mass
think
for
straight anymore.
storage.
The
He
cancer,
knew
the
air
medication,
infiltration
it's
is the
all.
real enemy,
It's all
not
fog.
cold itself.
I'll protect it.
He knew
I said.
radiant heat
I
outperforms
promise.
forced
But I
air
didn't know how.
fundamentally.
Not
And
yet.
he knew
July
working with
2022
natural
was
principles
brutal.
beats fighting them
The
with
heat,
mechanical systems.
The waiting.
We
Watching Mom
exchanged that
slip away
accumulated
inch by
wisdom
inch
for
while
construction
Karen
speed
bled her
and
accounts
cheap
dry.
fossil fuel
I'd started
energy.
taking photos
Now that energy
of
is
every bank
expensive
statement,
and climate
every
patterns are becoming
transaction.
more extreme.
I had a folder
We're
on my
paying the
phone
price for
labeled
that trade.
insurance documents.
If you found this
in
information
case Karen
valuable,
ever looked.
hit that like
Inside
button
were
and
47
subscribe.
screenshots
We're
of
uncovering
withdrawals,
forgotten knowledge that the
transfers,
modern
and
construction
Karen's text
industry
message
doesn't want
excuses.
widely known.
$127,000
The medieval timber cabin wasn't
became
accidental or lucky.
$183,000.
It represented centuries of
Then
experimentation
$240,000.
and refinement.
The savings
Structures
account
that
was
failed
almost
harsh winters
empty.
were abandoned
Karen had
and
transferred it all to
forgotten.
checking.
Designs
then
that
slowly
succeeded were
drained it.
copied
When I asked
and
her about
improved.
it, she said,
What survived was a
Mom wanted
building
her money
system
liquid,
so effective it
easy to
protected
access
families
for
through
end-of-life
minus 40
expenses.
degrees Fahrenheit
End of
winters
life
with zero
expenses
electricity
don't
and
cost
zero natural gas.
$240,000.
These people worked
I
14-hour
contacted Mom's
days,
bank
built
directly,
civilizations,
asked to
and
speak to
raised
the branch
families
manager.
successfully.
A woman
They
named
weren't weak
Patricia
or
Santos
struggling.
agreed
They were
to meet
strong
with
because
me.
their homes
Mr. Chun,
actually
I
sheltered them
understand your
instead of
concerns,
demanding
but
constant
your
energy
sister
and
is
money.
a joint account holder.
This knowledge
She has
wasn't
legal
lost
authority
forever.
to access
It
the
was simply
funds.
buried under
Even if my
marketing
mother
hype and
has
short-term
dementia
profit
from
thinking.
medication,
Every
even if
time
she
you build
can't
with
consent,
thermal mass,
Patricia's
seal
face
air leaks
softened.
properly, and
Did your
use
mother have
radiant
a
heating,
medical power of
you're
attorney
reviving that
established?
wisdom.
Yes.
Wisdom that kept
Both me
people
and Karen
alive
are
and comfortable
co-agents.
when the
Then
world
unless
was
you can prove your
unforgiving.
mother is
Wisdom that
mentally
still works
incompetent
today.
through a legal
Drop
process,
your comments below
or
about
unless
your
you can prove
experiences
fraud,
with winter
my
power
hands are
outages.
tied.
Have
Your
you
sister
tested
isn't
your home's
breaking
thermal
any
resilience?
banking laws.
Share your story,
She's stealing.
and let's
You
learn from
believe
each other.
she's stealing.
And
But
if you want to
belief
dive deeper
isn't
into these
evidence.
building principles,
Get a lawyer,
check out the
Mr.
resources
Chun.
I've linked below.
This is beyond what the
This
bank
is
can help
knowledge
with.
worth spreading.
I left that
Knowledge
meeting
that could
feeling
save
like I was
lives
drowning.
and fortunes.
That night, I called Linda.
Knowledge knowledge that
She'd been
builds true
patient
resilience
through all of
into your
this,
home.
visiting
Thanks for
every
watching,
weekend,
and I'll see you in the
supporting
next
me,
one.
never complaining that I'd basically
Critical in
abandoned
modern
our life
construction.
for 2 years
Back
to
in
care for Mom.
1869,
I don't know what to do.
engineers studied
told
the
her,
Heddel-Stave
"You
Church
document.
in Norway during
You
a
wait.
record-breaking
And when the
winter.
time comes,
The
you
temperature
fight.
outside had
What if
dropped
there's
to
nothing
minus
left to
35
fight
degrees
for?
Fahrenheit.
Then you fight anyway.
Snow covered
for your mom,
everything for miles.
for what's right.
Winds
Linda
tore through
always
the
knew the
mountains
right
with
thing
enough
to say.
power to
2
destroy
days later,
any modern tent.
something unexpected
But
happened.
inside this
A
timber
woman
church
showed up at
constructed
Mom's
in
house.
1150
She was
without
maybe
any heating
35,
system,
dressed
without
professionally,
insulation,
carrying
and
a
without
folder.
modern windows,
She knocked at
the
2
temperature
p.m.
remained at
right
48
after Teresa had
degrees
finished
Fahrenheit.
Mom's afternoon care.
No fire
Can
was
I
lit.
help you?
No
I asked through the
energy was
screen
being
door.
consumed.
Are you Michael
The
Chun?
building itself,
Yeah.
constructed
My name is
from
Amy
dense
Reyes.
timber using forgotten
I'm your cousin.
techniques,
Well,
maintained
second
thermal
cousin.
stability.
My grandmother
Now
was
think
your
about a
mom's
typical
cousin
American
Rosa.
home today.
Eva Guilli
Turn off your
remembered
heating
Rosa.
when it's
She
10
died
degrees
when I was a
Fahrenheit
kid.
outside.
Okay.
In
I
just
said
4
carefully.
hours, your
Can I come
indoor
in?
temperature
I need to
plummets
talk to you
below
about
40
something
degrees
important.
Fahrenheit.
I let her
Within
in.
8
We
hours,
sat at the
you're
kitchen
approaching
table.
freezing.
The same table
After
where
18
Mom
hours,
had told
you
us
risk
about the
frozen
cancer.
pipes
The
and
same
structural
table where
damage.
everything
The
had started
house
falling
becomes
apart.
dangerous.
I'm a paralegal.
What knowledge did
Amy
ancient
said.
builders
I work
possess
for a
that
law
we've
firm in
abandoned?
San Francisco.
Across the Nordic
Estate law
mountains,
mostly.
hundreds of
I heard
timber
through the family
structures from the
grapevine
12th
that your
to
mom is
16th
sick,
centuries
and I wanted
remain
to reach
intact
out.
today.
That's kind of
These
you,
buildings
but
have
I also
lasted
heard
through
Karen is on your
centuries of
mom's
punishment.
accounts. That
They've
stopped me
withstood
cold.
winters that
How
would
did you hear
destroy
that?
a
My
contemporary
mom talked
frame
to her
house in
sister,
mere weeks.
who talked to
They
someone at your
accomplished
mom's
this
church,
using
who
3
mentioned
fundamental
Karen was
principles
helping with
completely
finances.
absent from modern building
And based
codes:
on what I know about
thermal
Karen
mass
from family
storage,
stories,
complete
that
air
set off
sealing, and
alarm
heating
bells.
systems
What do you
designed
know
around
about
energy
Karen?
storage
Amy
rather
opened
than
her
constant
folder.
fuel burning.
When Karen was
These
22,
weren't separate tricks.
she borrowed
They worked together as
$15,000
one
from our
integrated
grandmother
system.
Rosa
Pure
for a
physics
business
applied
opportunity.
correctly,
Never
working
paid it back.
alongside
When
natural
Karen was
forces
28,
instead of fighting them.
she convinced your
Today's
Aunt Margaret
construction
to
fights
co-sign a
against
car
basic
loan.
thermodynamics.
Karen defaulted.
We combat
Margaret's
cold
credit
with
was
endless
destroyed.
energy input,
When Karen
and
was
we're
34,
failing badly.
she
Before
borrowed
we continue,
$8,000
leave a
from her
comment
mom
below.
for Jessica's
Have you
college
experienced a
fund.
winter
My mom
power
saw
outage?
that check.
How
Did
long
Jessica
did your
get
home
that
retain
money?
heat?
My stomach
2
turned.
hours,
I
8
don't know.
hours?
Jessica
Or
went
was
to
it
community
freezing
college
within
for one
minutes?
semester.
Share
then
your
dropped
story,
out.
because
That was 12
what comes
years ago.
next will
So where did
transform your understanding of
$8,000
modern
go?
buildings.
I stared
Let's
at this
go
woman
back
I
to
just met.
2012.
This stranger
Researchers
who knew
at
more
the
about my
Technical
sister's
University of
history
Norway
than I did.
conducted a
Why are you telling
fascinating
me
test.
this?
They
Because
used 2
families should
identical
protect
sized
family.
structures,
And because I've
each
seen this
approximately
before in my
400
work.
square feet.
Someone gets access
Structure
to an
1 was an
elderly person's
authentic medieval
accounts
timber
during
cabin
end-of-life
built to
care.
13th
They start with
century
small amounts.
specifications.
Test the waters.
Solid timber logs
then bigger
measuring
amounts.
11 inches in
By the
diameter,
time anyone notices,
hand-fitted with
the
precision
accounts are
joinery.
empty and the
Zero
victim
modern
is
insulation.
dead.
No
That's
plastic
exactly
barriers.
what's happening.
No
How much has
synthetic
she
materials
taken?
whatsoever.
$240,000.
Structure 2 was a
That I can
contemporary
prove.
prefabricated
Amy, close her
dwelling
eyes.
built to current
Jesus.
strict energy
What do I do?
regulations.
You need
Heavy
a lawyer.
insulation
Not
rated
just
are
any lawyer.
23.
Someone who
Multiple vapor
specializes
barriers.
in elder financial
Triple
abuse.
pane windows.
And you need to act
On
fast
any building
because once your
inspector's
mom
checklist,
passes,
the
proving
modern
abuse
structure
becomes
dominated
exponentially
completely.
harder.
Both sat
I
in
can't
the same
afford a lawyer.
location.
My pension
External
is
temperature,
decent, but
minus
not
12
lawyer-level
degrees
decent.
Fahrenheit.
The lawyer I work
Both
for
were
takes
warmed
some
to a
cases
comfortable
pro
70
bono if
degrees
there's clear
Fahrenheit.
elder abuse.
Then
Let me
researchers
make a
shut
call.
down all
Can
heating.
you send me your
The
documentation?
contemporary
I
house
sent her
dropped to
everything.
32
The
degrees
spreadsheet,
Fahrenheit
the
in just 7
screenshots,
hours.
the timeline.
The timber cabin,
2 days later,
after 48
Amy
hours,
called back.
internal
My boss wants to
temperature
meet
held
with you.
at 56
His name
degrees
is
Fahrenheit.
Richard Chun.
After
No
72
relation,
hours,
different Chun.
3 complete days
Look at your
with
evidence,
zero heat
and he's
input.
interested.
It still
We met the
measured
following
45
Tuesday.
degrees Fahrenheit.
Richard Chin's office
safely
was in
above freezing.
downtown Fresno.
The modern
on
building
the
had
third
become
floor of
a
an
potentially
old building
lethal
that
freezer,
smelled like
while the
coffee
ancient
and paper.
cabin remained
He was maybe
completely
50,
habitable.
salt and
How
pepper
is this
hair,
possible?
sharp eyes.
A typical
Mr.
engineer
Chun,
today would
I'll
call
be
this
direct.
result
What
impossible.
your sister is doing
The timber
is
cabins
likely
are valued
elder
sits
financial
around
abuse
9.
under California
The contemporary
law.
house
The problem is
boasts are
proving it before
23.
your mother dies.
Higher our
How's her
value
mental
equals
state?
superior insulation by
Declining.
definition.
The pain medication
The modern house
keeps her
should
pretty out
dominate
of
this
it.
test,
She has
right?
good days
But
and bad days.
our value only
Can she
accounts for heat
testify
transfer
to not
under steady
authorizing
conditions.
these withdrawals?
It completely
Some days,
disregards
yes.
thermal mass.
Some days,
And
she
thermal
barely
mass
knows who I
changes
am.
everything
Richard
fundamentally.
nodded. We need to move
11-inch
quickly.
thick wall
I can
of
file
old
for a
growth
temporary
strips
restraining
weighs
order to
approximately
freeze the
75
accounts.
pounds
But
per
I need your
linear
mother to
foot.
sign an
Wood
affidavit on a
possesses
good day
exceptional
stating
specific
that she
heat
didn't
capacity,
authorize Karen
allowing
to
it to
withdraw
store
that money
tremendous
for
amounts
personal
of
use.
thermal energy.
What if Karen
When you
says
heat the
Mom mom
cabin,
did authorize
the
it.
timber absorbs
Then it
that
becomes a
warmth
he
deep
said,
into
she
its
said
cellular structure.
situation.
When
and we'll
heating
need
stops,
additional evidence.
the wood releases
Do you
this
have any
stored
recordings?
energy gradually
Any
over
witnesses
many
to
hours and
conversations?
even days.
No recordes.
In the contemporary house,
But Teresa,
walls
the
consist of
hospice
thin
nurse,
drywall,
has been around
plastic
for
sheeting,
some of the financial discussions.
fiberglass insulation,
and Mom's
and
doctor
exterior
can
cladding.
testify
Total
to her
wall
medication
assembly
levels
weight,
and cognitive
maybe 8
state.
pounds per
That
linear
helps.
foot.
Here's
There's
what I need from
essentially
you.
zero mass
Get your mother to
available
sign
for
an
heat
affidavit
storage.
on her next clear day.
Insulation slows
I'll
heat
draft
escape,
it. Get
Sure,
Teresa to
but it
witness
stores
it.
absolutely
Then we
nothing.
file for
The
emergency
moment your
relief
furnace cycles
to
off,
freeze the accounts
warmth in the air
and
escapes
demand
through
an
microscopic
accounting from
gaps
Karen
and thermal
of every
bridges.
dollar spent.
Because stick
How
frame
long does that
construction
take?
has no
In
thermal mass,
emergency
there's no energy
situations?
reservoir
2
to
weeks
sustain
maybe.
interior
Depends on the
temperature.
court calendar.
Ancient
2
builders
weeks.
grasped this
In that
principle
time,
intuitively.
Karen could drain
They
another
selected trees aged
$50,000
70
or
to
more.
90 years
There's
minimum.
one more thing.
Trees
Richard
growing in
said.
harsh
This will get
northern
ugly.
climates
Your
develop
sister will
extremely
fight back.
slowly.
She'll
Growth
hire
rings
lawyers.
pack incredibly
She'll make
tight,
accusations
sometimes
against you.
exceeding
She'll try to paint
120
you
rings
as the
per
one
inch.
taking
This
advantage
creates
of your mother.
extraordinarily
Are you prepared
dense,
for that?
heavy
I
timber.
thought about Mom crying,
1 cubic foot
saying,
of old-growth
"I'm sorry."
spruce weighs
I thought
over
about
40 pounds.
years of her working
Modern
as a bookkeeper,
fast-growth pine,
saving
26
every
pounds.
penny, denying
That density
herself
matters
luxuries
enormously.
so we'd have something when
Greater
she was
mass
gone.
equals
Yeah,
greater
I
storage
said,
capacity.
I'm prepared.
More storage
We drafted the
means
affidavit
extended
that
thermal
afternoon.
lag time.
Simple,
It
clear
requires
language.
10 to 16
I,
hours for
Eleanor
external
Chun,
cold to
am of
penetrate
sound
an
mind at the time
11-inch
of
dense
signing
timber
this
wall.
document.
By
I
that
authorized
time,
my daughter
you've
Karen
typically
to be
restarted your
added
heat
to my
source.
checking account
The
for the
cabin
sole
functions
purpose
like
of
a
paying my
massive
monthly
thermal
bills and
battery,
expenses.
eliminating
I
temperature
did not
fluctuations.
authorize her to withdraw
But mass
large
alone
sums of
isn't
money
sufficient.
for personal use
You also
or
need
for
complete
any
air
purpose
sealing.
other than my direct
This
care.
reveals the
I
second
believe
crucial
money has
secret.
been taken from my
Despite
accounts
all
without
our
my
advanced
permission.
house wraps
I
and
request
sealing tapes,
immediate
contemporary
investigation
homes
and accounting
leak like
of
sieves.
all funds.
Blower door
I took it
testing
home,
reveals the
waited
average
for
modern
Mom
house
to
has
have a clear
cumulative
morning.
air
It
leakage
came
equivalent to
3
leaving a
days
22 by
August
18-inch
2nd,
window
2022.
completely open.
Mom woke up
This
more
isn't
alert
hyperbole.
than she'd been in
Combine
weeks.
every gap
Morning,
around electrical
baby,
boxes,
she said
trim
when I
work,
brought her
and
breakfast.
window frames.
Morning, Mom.
That's the
You
hole
seem
you're
good
trying
today.
to heat.
I feel
When
good.
it's 0 degrees
Well, not good,
outside,
but
frigid
clear.
air pours
My head
through
is clear.
continuously.
Mom,
Your heating
I need you to
system
do
isn't
something.
battling the walls.
And I need you to
It's
trust
fighting
me.
an
I
invisible
explained
open
everything.
portal.
The
The timber
affidavit,
cabins
the
eliminated
lawyer,
this
the
problem.
plan.
Logs
Mom
were
listened
joined
quietly.
using scribe
When I
fit joinery.
finished, she said,
Each
"Where
log
do I
was
sign?"
individually shaped
Teresa
to perfectly
witnessed
match the log
signature.
beneath it.
She even
This
added her
process
own
took
statement.
weeks of
I have
skilled
been
labor.
Eleanor Chin's
A
hospice
single room
nurse
could
for
require
14
months to complete.
In my
But the
professional
outcome was a
opinion,
wall
she
assembly
understood
with
this
virtually
document
no
and
air
signed it
infiltration.
willingly.
Then
2 days
came
later,
the chinking process.
Richard filed for a
Gaps were
temporary
filled with
restraining
sphagnum
order
moss
in
harvested
emergency
from
accounting.
wetlands.
Karen got
This
the
moss
notification
absorbs
on
up to
August
25
9th,
times its weight in
2022.
moisture.
She
When
called
dried
me at
and compressed,
11:47
it
p.m.
expands into
I know
every
because I
tiny
looked at
crack.
the clock.
Over
What
this,
the fuck did you do?
builders applied a
She was
mixture of
screaming.
clay
I
blended
protected
with animal
Mom.
fiber,
You sued
typically
me?
wool
Your
or
own
goat hair.
sister.
The
You're
clay
stealing from
hardens
our
to
dying
create an
mother.
airtight seal
I'm
while the
managing her
fiber
money.
acts like
Money that will be
reinforcement
mine
to prevent
anyway
cracking.
when she
It's
dies.
a breathing system.
Half yours.
Water vapor
and
can
only if
migrate
there's
through,
anything
but
left.
air movement cannot
There's
occur.
plenty left.
When
Then you won't
scientists
mind
test these
providing
500-year-old
receipts for
structures today,
$240,000
many
in
achieve or
expenses.
surpass modern
Silence.
passive house
Long
airtightness
silence.
standards.
Then
A dwelling
you're going to
constructed with
regret this,
hand
Michael.
tools and
I
natural
promise you
moss
that.
outperforms
She
a
hung up.
suburban home
The next
built
morning,
with engineered
Karen showed up at
composites.
Mom's house
The
with her
third
own
critical
lawyer.
element
A
is
slick
the
guy in
heating
an
strategy
expensive
itself.
suit named
This is
Bradley
where
Morrison.
things get
They
truly
demanded to see
fascinating.
Mom.
We
She's
typically
sleeping,
imagine
I
old
said.
cabins with
Wake
open
her up.
fireplaces.
This is
But
important.
open fireplaces are
Bradley
thermal
stepped
catastrophes.
Mr.
They
Chun,
pull
we
enormous
can do this the
volumes of
easy
heated
way
indoor
or the hard
air
way.
and
The
blast
easy
it straight
way
up the
is
chimney.
you let us speak to your
A big
mother.
open fire
The hard
can
way is we
actually
get a
cool a
court
house
order
by
and
creating
remove you
negative
from
air
the
pressure.
premises for obstructing
Instead,
access. My
Scandinavians
hands
used
clenched,
masonry
but I
heaters
stepped
called
aside.
K-Clove
They
or
went into Mom's
soapstone
room.
stoves.
I stood in the
These are
doorway,
substantial
arms
units
crossed.
constructed from stone
Karen
or
sat on
brick,
the edge of Mom's
weighing
bed.
multiple tons.
Mom, wake up. It's
You
Karen.
burn an intense,
Mom's eyes open
fast
slowly.
fire once
Confused.
or twice daily.
Foggy.
Combustion
Mom,
is complete
Michael is
and
trying
efficient.
to cause trouble.
But
He
instead of
filed some
exhaust
legal
gases
papers saying
exiting
I stole
directly,
from you.
they
But I didn't
wind
steal
through a maze
anything,
of
did
channels
I?
within the
I was
stone
just helping.
mass.
Like you
Heat
asked.
transfers to the
right?
stone before
Mom looked at
gases
her,
reach the
then at
chimney.
me.
By the
Mom,
time
tell them.
smoke exits
Tell them you
outside,
asked me
it's
to help
barely
with the money.
above ambient temperature.
Mom's voice
All
was
that
weak.
thermal energy
I don't
is
remember.
captured in the stone.
You don't remember
This
asking me to
stone
help.
mass then
I don't
radiates
remember
warmth
anything.
steadily for
Where's
10
Michael?
to 16 hours.
I'm here, Mom.
The surface
Bradley was
temperature
typing
stays
notes on his
around
phone.
135
Mrs. Chun,
to
do you
170
remember
degrees
signing a
Fahrenheit.
document about your bank
Warm enough
accounts
to
last
feel
week?
comfortable,
Mom's
but
face
safe for
scrunched
direct
up.
contact.
A sign. Lots
You
of
can
things.
sit against it.
This was wrong.
You can even
This was
sleep
so
beside
wrong.
it.
They were
The heat
questioning
is
her when
radiant,
she was barely
meaning
conscious.
it warms objects and
That's
bodies,
enough, I
not
said.
merely the air.
Get out.
Radiant
Karen
heating
stood,
creates comfort
gladly.
at lower
Come on,
air
Bradley.
temperatures.
We got what we
You
needed.
feel comfortable
After
in
they
58
left,
degrees
Mom
Fahrenheit
started
air.
crying.
if you're
Did I
near
say
a
something wrong?
155 degrees
No,
Fahrenheit
Mom,
stone mass.
you didn't do anything wrong.
A contemporary
but I knew what
forced
just
air
happened.
system must
Karen's
heat air
lawyer
to 70
would
degrees
use Mom's
Fahrenheit to
confusion
achieve
to
the
claim
same comfort
she was
level.
incompetent
That
to sign
represents
the affidavit.
massive energy
That the whole
waste.
case was
A
invalid.
Swedish study
That
from
night, I
2005
sat in the kitchen with
reconstructed
my
a
head in my
traditional log
hands.
dwelling and
Amy
tested
called.
it at
Richard
minus
told me what
18
happened.
degrees
Don't
Fahrenheit.
give up.
A
They're going to
single
win.
90-minute
Mom
fire
can barely
using
remember her own
approximately
name
40
some
pounds
days,
of wood
which
maintained
is exactly
interior
why what
temperatures
Karen did
above
is abuse.
57 degrees
We'll make that
Fahrenheit
argument.
for over
Hang
14
in there.
hours.
But I
Fuel
wasn't sure
consumption
how
was
much longer
roughly
I could hang
1/12
on.
what a
The
modern
money
home
was
with gas heating
disappearing.
would consume
Mom
in the
was
same
dying,
time frame.
and Karen was
And
always
this was
one step
achieved
ahead.
without
The
any
court
modern
hearing was
insulation
scheduled for
technology.
August 23rd,
Just thermal mass,
2022.
air sealing,
2 weeks
and
away.
radiant
In
heat
those 2
working
weeks,
together.
everything got
Interior
worse.
layout also
Mom
played a
stopped eating.
massive role
Just
in
stopped.
efficiency.
Teresa said it
Scandinavian
was
cabins
normal for
rejected
end-stage
open
cancer
concept
patients,
design.
but watching
Modern
her
open
fade
floor
was
plans are
torture.
efficiency nightmares.
She lost 40 pounds
Heated air
already.
rises and
Now
gets
she was
trapped
just
in
skin
high
and
ceilings while
bones and
occupants
those sharp
freeze
brown
at
eyes
floor
that
level.
sometimes recognized
Medieval
me
cabins
and
featured
sometimes
low
didn't.
ceilings,
Karen didn't
typically
visit.
just
Not
6.5
once.
feet high.
Her lawyers sent
Rooms were
letters.
small and
Lots of
separated by
letters.
solid doors.
They claimed I was
This
the one
concentrated
manipulating
heat,
Mom.
where people
But I'd
actually spent
isolated
time.
her from Karen.
The central
But the
room for
affidavit
cooking
was
and daily
signed under
activities
duress.
stayed warmest.
All lies.
Sleeping
But lies
rooms were
wrapped in
cooler,
legal
which didn't
language
matter
sound like
because
truth.
people slept
On
under
August
heavy wool
15th,
blankets and furs.
1 week before the
This
hearing,
thermal
I
zoning
was cleaning out
strategy
Mom's desk
drastically
looking for
reduced
old
heating
medical bills
requirements.
to prove
There was
Karen's
zero need to
expensive
maintain
story
and
was
use
bullshit.
spaces at
Mama
68
kept
degrees
everything.
Fahrenheit.
Receipts going
We've
back
completely
years.
discarded this
Organized in
logic in our
folders by
obsession
year
with
and
expansive
category.
great rooms.
That's when I found it.
Then
A
consider the
checkbook,
foundation approach.
hidden in the back of the bottom
Many
drawer,
modern American
under a
homes
stack of old
sit on
birthday
slab-on-grade
cards.
concrete.
But not Mom's checkbook.
Concrete
The
functions
register
as a
was in
thermal
different
bridge.
handwriting.
It pulls
Neat,
heat from your living
precise.
space and dumps
Karen's
it straight
handwriting.
into frozen
I
ground.
recognized it from birthday
Scandinavian
cards
cabins
she'd
were
sent
elevated
over
on
the years.
stone piers
My
that
hand
lifted
started
timber off
shaking
the
as
earth.
I opened it.
This
The check
created
were
an
from
air
Mom's
gap
account,
functioning as
but the
insulation.
register showed
Floors
deposits and
consisted of thick
withdrawals that
planks,
didn't match
often
any
double
bank
layered with
statements I'd
sawdust
seen.
or moss
I read
packed
the
between.
entries.
This
June
eliminated
12,
the thermal bridge
2022,
completely.
Withdrawal,
No heat bled into the ground
$8,000
below.
dental work.
Every design
June
detail
19th,
focused on
2022,
heat retention.
Withdrawal,
So why did we
$12,000
abandon these proven
property
methods?
Bakit katandige
Three
ba
primary
Jay?
reasons:
2022,
speed, cost, and
withdrawal,
cheap fossil fuels.
$15,000.
After World War II,
medical
we
equipment.
needed millions
July
of houses
3rd,
immediately.
2022,
Scribing logs
withdrawal,
and hand-cutting joints
$20,000.
required months.
Advance on
Stick
inheritance
framing with
will
dimensional
repay.
lumber
That
and
last one,
plywood took only
advance
weeks.
on inheritance.
Labor costs
Karen
were high,
knew she was
so
stealing.
materials
She'd
needed to
written it
be
down,
inexpensive.
but there was more.
Thin walls
Entries
with
going
batt
back
insulation
further.
cost far
Before
less than
April,
solid
when
timber.
Karen got added
Then
to the
came the
account.
energy revolution.
February 2nd,
During the 1950s
2022,
and 60s,
withdrawal,
oil and natural gas
$5,000.
were incredibly
Emergency
cheap.
loan
Who
from
cared
Mom.
about efficiency
March 15th,
when you could simply
2022,
turn up the thermostat?
Withdrawal,
We stopped designing for resilience
$7,500.
and started
Mom's
optimizing
gift
for
Jessica's
lowest initial
birthday.
cost.
How?
We created
Karen
houses
wasn't on
on
the
life
account,
support,
yet in February or
requiring
March.
constant energy
I
input.
flipped to the front of the
Cut the
checkbook,
supply,
looked
and
at the
they
account
fail
number.
immediately.
It was Mom's
But energy
savings
costs
account.
have skyrocketed.
The one Karen shouldn't
Power
have had
grids
access
are becoming
to until
increasingly
April.
unstable.
My chest got tight.
People are
Karen had been
realizing their
stealing
expensive
before
homes are
she was
actually
even on the
extremely
accounts.
fragile.
But how?
Throughout
I
Europe,
took photos
particularly
of every
in
page.
Germany,
Then I called
Austria,
Amy.
and Switzerland,
I found something.
there's a significant
What?
movement
The checkbook.
returning to solid
Karen's
timber
handwriting.
construction and
It
mass
shows she was
timber
taking
technology.
money as
This
early
is a
as
nostalgia.
February,
It's applied
before she
physics.
had legal access.
Architects are
That's
merging
fraud.
traditional
That's
timber
actual
principles
criminal
with
fraud.
contemporary
Send me
technology.
the photos now.
Thick
I
cross-laminated
sent them.
timber panels,
30 seconds
masonry
later,
heaters,
my phone
and
rang.
intelligent compact
Michael,
layouts.
this changes everything.
They're achieving dramatic
if she was
reductions
accessing
in
accounts
energy
before
consumption.
being added
A
as
properly
joint
constructed
owner,
solid
that's
timber
identity
home can
theft and
operate on
forgery.
1/3 the
Did your mom
energy of
give her blank
conventional
checks?
construction.
I don't
And when
know.
power
I can
fails,
ask.
it
Do
remains livable
Now,
for multiple
if your
days.
mom says no,
Scientific
Karen is
research
looking at
supports
criminal
these
charges.
claims completely.
I went to Mom's
A
room. She
2019
was awake,
study by the
staring
University
at the
of
ceiling.
Innsbruck monitored
Mom,
solid timber
I need to
houses
ask you
versus
something.
conventional builds
Okay.
over 5
Did
years.
you give Karen
The
any
timber
check from
homes
your savings
consumed
account
38%
before
less
April?
heating energy
Mom's
during
face
winter.
scrunched up,
In summer,
thinking,
they required
no,
no
that
air
account.
conditioning because
That was my
thermal mass
emergency
buffered
fund.
heat gain.
Nobody had checked
Residents
for it
reported
except
fewer
me.
drafts
Are
and
you sure?
superior indoor air
Michael,
quality.
I may be
Wood
dying,
naturally
but I'm not
moderates
stupid.
humidity,
That account was
absorbing
mine.
excess
For
moisture when
emergencies,
damp and
I never
releasing it when
gave
dry.
Karen checks.
No mold
I
problems.
kissed her forehead.
No dry
Thank you,
air
Mom.
issues.
I called
No
Richard
noisy
immediately.
mechanical
We have
humidifiers
her,
needed.
he said after I
And there's
explained.
another factor
This
we
is no
rarely
longer
discuss.
just civil
longevity.
elder abuse.
A contemporary
criminal.
house begins
I'm
deteriorating
contacting
the
the
moment
DA's office
construction
today.
finishes.
What does that mean?
Vapor barriers
It means
tear.
Karen could go to jail.
Fiberglass settles
And it means the court
and
will take
loses
our restraining
effectiveness.
order
Framing
very
lumber
seriously.
rots when moisture
For the first time
penetrates
in months,
behind siding.
I felt hope.
After
The
25
court
years,
hearing on August
you're facing
23rd
major
was
renovation
surreal.
expenses.
Mom couldn't attend.
Scandinavian
Too
timber
sick.
cabins have
But
endured
Richard
for
had her
500
video
years.
deposition from
As
a
timber
clear
settles
day,
during the first
the
few
affidavit,
years,
Teresa's
joints actually
testimony,
become tighter.
medical records
A
proving
40-year-old
Mom's
log
cognitive
home
decline,
often performs
and now the
better
checkbook
than a
evidence.
brand new one.
Karen showed
It's
up
an
in a
asset
designer
that
suit,
improves with age,
perfectly made up,
while modern
playing the
construction
victim.
depreciates
Her lawyer
from
Bradley
day one.
argued that Mom
If you're planning to
had
build
given
or
Karen
renovate
verbal
a home
permission
today for
for
resilience,
everything. That
efficiency,
Michael
and
was
longevity,
a disgruntled
adopt
sibling
these
trying to
principles.
cut Karen out.
You don't need to
But the
live in a
checkbook
medieval
was a
structure, but
misunderstanding.
you can
In
incorporate thermal
misunderstanding,
mass.
Richard
Investigate
stood up.
mass timber
Mrs.
or
Morrison
solid log
wrote,
construction
"Advance
options.
on inheritance."
If solid
in
timber
her own
walls
handwriting.
aren't feasible,
That's an admission
integrate
of theft.
stone mass
My
internally.
client
A
intended
masonry
to
heater
repay.
or a substantial
From her
stone
mother's
fireplace surround
inheritance?
can serve
That's
as
not
your
repayment.
thermal battery.
That's theft twice
Prioritize
over.
complete air
The
sealing.
judge, a woman
Invest
named Marion
in
Foster,
professional blower door
looked tired.
testing and
She'd
seal
probably
every
seen
leak
100
meticulously.
cases like this.
This delivers
Here's what I'm
more
going to
value
do,
than adding
Judge
extra
Foster
insulation
said.
layers.
I'm granting the
Designed
temporary
for
restraining order.
compactness.
All
Eliminate
of Eleanor
cathedral
Chin's accounts
ceilings
are
if
frozen
efficiency matters to
immediately
you.
except
Lower
for a
ceilings
monthly
and
allowance
closable
of
rooms concentrate
$5,000
heat
for
where
legitimate
you
care
actually are.
expenses, which
Implement
must be
thermal
approved by
zoning
Michael
strategies.
Chun and
Heat your
documented
living
with
spaces
receipts.
actively.
Karen's
Allow
face
sleeping
went white.
areas to remain
Furthermore,
cooler. And
Judge
think
Foster
long-term
continued,
value.
I'm
A
ordering
house
a full
costing
forensic
$60,000
accounting
more
of
to
all
construct,
withdrawals
but saving
since
you
February
$120,000 in
Karen
utilities
Morrison,
and
you have
maintenance
30
over 30
days to
years
provide
is the intelligent
documentation
investment.
for every dollar
Modern building
withdrawn.
codes
If you
obsess
cannot
over our
provide
values
legitimate
and
receipts,
upfront construction costs.
you will be required to
They
return
completely
those
ignore
funds.
resilience
Your
and
Honor,
life cycle
Bradley
value.
started.
The
I'm not
Scandinavian
finished.
farmer in his
I'm also
13th
referring
century
this case
cabin
to the
wasn't
district
primitive
attorney's
or
office
backward.
for
He
potential
was a
criminal
master of practical
investigation
physics.
regarding the
He understood
pre-April
that
withdrawals.
heat requires
This
mass
court
for
takes
storage.
elder financial
He knew
abuse
air
very
infiltration is the
seriously.
real enemy,
The gavel came
not
down.
cold itself.
Karen didn't look at
He
me
knew
as she
radiant
left.
heat outperforms
Outside the
forced air
courthouse,
fundamentally.
Richard shook my hand.
And he
did
knew
it.
working with
The
natural
accounts are
principles
frozen.
beats fighting
She
them
can't
with
take
mechanical
anymore.
systems.
How much is
We
left?
exchanged
We'll
that
find out
accumulated
during the
wisdom for
forensic
construction
accounting.
speed
But based on
and
what you've
cheap
documented,
fossil fuel energy.
probably around
Now that
$1.4
energy
million.
is expensive and
For
climate patterns
$100,000
are becoming
gone.
more extreme.
In less than 6
We're paying the
months.
price for that
But we'd
trade.
stopped her.
If you found this
Finally
information
stopped her.
valuable,
I drove
hit that
back
like
to
button
Mom's
and
house
subscribe.
feeling lighter than
We're
I had in
uncovering
months.
forgotten
I couldn't
knowledge
wait
that
to
the
tell
modern
her.
construction
But when I
industry
walked in,
doesn't want
Teresa
widely
was there.
known.
Her
The medieval
face
timber
said
cabin
everything.
wasn't accidental
She's asking
or lucky.
for you.
It
Teresa
represented
said
centuries of
quietly.
experimentation
It's time, Michael.
and
Mom's
refinement.
propped up on pillows.
Structures that
breathing
failed
shallow,
harsh winters
eyes
were
half open.
abandoned and
Mom,
forgotten.
Michael.
Designs
Her
that
voice
succeeded
was
were
barely a
copied
whisper.
and
Did
improved.
we win?
What
Yeah, Mom.
survived was a building
We won.
system so
The judge
effective
froze
it
the
protected
accounts.
families through
Karen
minus
can't
40
take
degrees
anymore.
Fahrenheit winters with
smile.
zero electricity
So small.
and zero
Good.
natural
Good
gas.
baby.
These
Mom,
people
don't
worked
talk.
14-hour
Save
days,
your energy.
built
No
civilizations,
energy left
and
to
raised
save.
families
Her
successfully.
hand found mine.
They weren't weak
Cold.
or struggling.
So cold.
They were strong
I'm sorry
because
I
their
let her.
homes
I
actually
should have
sheltered
known.
them instead of
You have
demanding
nothing to be
constant
sorry
energy
for.
and money.
Love you.
This
Love you
knowledge
so much.
wasn't lost forever.
I love you too, Mom.
It was simply
Her eyes
buried under
closed.
marketing hype
She died
and
at
short-term profit
6:47
thinking.
p.m.
Every time you
August
build with
23rd,
thermal mass,
2022,
seal air leaks
the same
properly,
day we won
and
in
use
court.
radiant heating,
Mom's funeral
you're
was on
reviving that
October
wisdom.
3rd, 2023.
Wisdom that kept people
We'd waited
alive
over a
and
year.
comfortable
Not
when
because
the
we
world
wanted
was
to,
unforgiving.
because Karen
Wisdom
fought
that
us on
still works
everything.
today.
After
Drop
Mom
your
died,
comments below about
Karen
your experiences
immediately
with
filed
winter
an
power
objection to the
outages.
will.
Have
Claimed
you
Mom
tested your
wasn't
home's
mentally
thermal
competent when
resilience?
she'd updated it.
Share your story
Claimed I'd
and let's learn
manipulated
from
her.
each other.
The probate
And
process
if you want to dive
ground
deeper
to a
into these
halt
building
while
principles,
lawyers argued.
check out the
For
resources I've
14
linked below.
months, everything
This
was
is
frozen.
knowledge worth
The
spreading.
house sat empty.
Knowledge that
The
could
accounts
save
stayed
lives
locked.
and fortunes.
Karen and I didn't
Knowledge
speak
that builds
except through
true
lawyers.
resilience into your
The
home.
forensic accounting
Thanks for
came
watching,
back in
and
November
I'll see you in the
2022.
next one.
Karen had
We've
stolen
lost something critical in modern construction.
$438,000.
Back in
Not $400,000
1869,
like we thought.
Engineers studied the Hedel-Stave Church in Norway during a
She
record-breaking
couldn't
winter.
provide
The
receipts
temperature
for any of it.
outside had dropped
The
to
court
minus
ordered her
35
to repay
degrees
it all.
Fahrenheit.
She filed for
Snow
bankruptcy
covered
instead.
everything for miles.
The DA decided
Winds tore
not
through the
to
mountains
press
with
criminal
enough
charges.
power to destroy any
Insufficient
modern
evidence
intent.
of criminal
But
intent,
inside this
they
timber
said.
church constructed
Apparently
in
writing
1150 without
Advance on
any heating
Inheritance
system,
wasn't
without
enough
insulation,
proof
and
she
without
knew she
modern
was
windows,
stealing. I
the
was
temperature
furious.
remained at
But
48
Richard
degrees
said,
Fahrenheit.
focus on what we can
No
control.
fire was
The
lit.
civil case.
No energy
making
was being
sure
consumed.
she doesn't get a
The
penny
building
more.
itself,
So we
constructed
fought
from dense
and fought
timber using
and
forgotten
fought.
techniques,
By
maintained
October
thermal
2023,
stability.
We
Now
finally
think about
reached
a
a
typical
settlement.
American home today.
Karen would get nothing
Turn off
from
your
the
heating
estate
when
until
it's
she
10 degrees
repaid
Fahrenheit
the
outside.
$438,000.
In just 4 hours, your indoor
Since she
temperature
declared
plummets
bankruptcy,
below 40
that
degrees
meant never.
Fahrenheit.
The
Within
remaining
8 hours, you're approaching freezing.
$1.362 million
After
would
18
go to
hours,
me.
you
And we
risk
could
frozen
finally bury
pipes
Mom.
and structural
Karen
damage.
showed up to the funeral
The house
in black
becomes
Gucci.
dangerous.
I know because
What
she
knowledge
told
did
3
ancient
people
builders
it was
possess
Gucci.
that we've
Her
abandoned?
daughter Jessica
Across the Nordic
was with
mountains,
her,
hundreds
looking
of
bored
timber
and
structures from
scrolling
the
on her
12th
phone.
to
The
16th
service was at
centuries
Mom's
remain
church.
intact today.
Small.
These
Maybe
buildings
40
have
people.
lasted through
Mom's
centuries
friend
of
from
punishment.
work, neighbors,
They've withstood
distant
winters that would
relatives who'd heard
destroy
about
a
the drama
contemporary
and
frame
came to
house
watch
in
the
mere
show.
weeks.
I gave
They
the eulogy.
accomplished this
Talked
using
about
3
Mom's
fundamental
strength,
principles
her
completely
kindness,
absent from
how she
modern
worked
building
for
codes:
40 years,
thermal mass
saving
storage,
every dollar
complete
to
air
leave her
sealing,
kids
and
something.
heating
How
systems
she died
designed around
knowing at
energy
least part of it
storage
was
rather than
protected.
constant
I didn't
fuel
mention
burning.
Karen.
These
Didn't
weren't
have
separate
to.
tricks.
Everyone
They
knew.
worked together
After the
as
service,
one integrated
people
system.
gathered
Pure
at the church
physics
hall for
applied
lunch.
correctly,
Standard
working
funeral food,
alongside natural
sandwiches,
forces instead of
potato
fighting them.
salad,
Today's
coffee.
construction
That's when I
fights
set up the
against
recording.
basic
I
thermodynamics.
thought about it for weeks.
We combat
Ever
cold
since
with
Amy
endless
mentioned
energy
that we
input,
needed more
and we're
evidence
failing
of Karen's
badly.
intent,
Before we
her
continue,
mindset.
leave a
The
comment
bankruptcy
below.
had protected
Have
her
you
from paying
experienced a
back the
winter
money,
power outage?
but it didn't
How
change
long
what
did your
she'd
home
done.
retain heat?
And I wanted proof.
2 hours,
Real
8
proof.
hours?
In her
or
own words.
was it freezing within
My phone was in
minutes?
my jacket pocket.
Share your story,
Recording app
because
running.
what comes
I made
next
sure to
will
stand near
transform
Karen
your
and her
understanding
little
of
group.
modern buildings.
Jessica,
Let's go
Bradley
back
the lawyer,
to 2012.
and Karen's friend Denise, who'd
Researchers
flown in
at
from
the
San
Technical
Diego.
University of
At
Norway
first,
conducted
they
a
talked about
fascinating
normal
test.
things.
They
The
used
service,
2
the
identical-sized
flowers,
structures,
how the pastor
each
had done a
approximately
nice job.
400
Then
square
Karen's
feet.
voice dropped
Structure 1
lower,
was an
but not
authentic
low
medieval
enough.
timber cabin
Well,
built to
at least it's
13th
finally
century
over.
specifications.
Did you get anything?
Solid
Denise
timber
asked.
logs measuring
Karen
11
laughed.
inches in diameter.
Actually laughed.
Hand-fitted
Not a
with
cent.
precision joinery.
The judge gave it all
Zero
to St.
modern
Michael.
insulation.
But honestly, I
plastic
already got
barriers.
mine.
No
My blood
synthetic
went ice
materials
cold.
whatsoever.
What do you mean?
Structure
Jessica
2
asked.
was a
I mean, I took what I
contemporary
deserved years ago.
prefabricated dwelling
Almost
built
half a
to
million.
current strict
Mom would have
energy
blown it on
regulations.
medical bills anyway.
Heavy
But
insulation
the court
rated
ordered
are
you to pay
23.
it back, Denise said.
Multiple vapor
Yeah.
barriers.
Well,
Triple pane
bankruptcy
windows.
is a beautiful
On any
thing.
building
They can
inspector's
order all they
checklist,
want. I don't
the
have it
modern
anymore.
structure dominated
Another
completely.
laugh. I
Both
invested
sat
it.
in the same
Tech stocks,
location.
crypto,
External
real estate.
temperature,
Some of it's gone,
minus 12
sure.
degrees
But I
Fahrenheit.
still have about
Both were warmed
$200,000
to a
hidden in
comfortable
accounts they don't
70
know
degrees
about.
Fahrenheit.
Offshore stuff.
Then researchers
Bradley
shut
set it
down
up.
all
I
heating.
couldn't breathe.
The contemporary
hidden
house
money
dropped to
while claiming
32
bankruptcy,
degrees Fahrenheit
while telling
in
the
just
court
7 hours.
she had nothing.
The timber
Bradley's
cabin,
voice came
after
next.
48 hours,
Karen,
internal
we probably
temperature
shouldn't
held
talk
at
about.
56
Oh, please, who
degrees
cares?
Fahrenheit.
Michael's
After
over there
72
playing
hours,
grieving son.
3
He
complete
has
days
no
with
idea.
0 heat
And even
input.
if he did,
It
what's he
still
going to
measured
do?
45
To me
degrees
again?
Fahrenheit.
I'm judgment-proof
safely
now.
above freezing.
Mom was so
The
easy.
modern building had
Karen
become
continued.
a
I
potentially
just told her I
lethal
needed
freezer,
help with
while
bills,
the ancient
and
cabin
she'd hand
remained
over a
completely
checkbook.
habitable.
Toward the end,
How is this possible?
she didn't even remember
A
I'd
typical
been there.
engineer today
It
would
was like
call
taking
this
candy
result
from a baby.
impossible.
A dying,
The timber
confused
cabins, our
baby.
value, sits
Jessica
around 9.
giggled.
The
Actually
contemporary
giggled.
house boasts
That's
are
awful, Karen,
23.
Denise said,
Higher our
but she
value
was
equals
smiling.
superior
What's
insulation
awful
by
is I should have
definition.
taken more.
The modern
There was
house should
$1.8
dominate
million
this test, right?
just sitting there.
But
I
our
could have
value
cleaned out
only accounts for
everything if
heat
Michael
transfer
hadn't
under
gotten
steady
paranoid.
conditions.
Your mom
It
trusted
completely
you, Denise said.
disregards thermal
Yeah, well,
mass.
Trust is
And
expensive.
thermal mass
She
changes
paid for
everything
hers.
fundamentally.
My hands were
An
shaking
11-inch thick
so
wall
hard,
of old
I had
growth
to press
spruce
them
weighs
against my
approximately
legs.
75
I wanted to turn
pounds
around.
per linear
I wanted
foot.
to scream.
Wood
I wanted to hit
possesses
her.
exceptional
But I didn't.
specific heat
I
capacity,
stood there for another 5
allowing
minutes.
it to store
Let her
tremendous
keep
amounts
talking.
of thermal
She
energy.
bragged about the offshore
When you
accounts,
heat the cabin,
about how
the
she'd
timber
spent
absorbs that
$50,000
warmth
on a
deep
new
into
car.
its cellular
Another
structure. When
$80,000
heating
on
stops,
renovating her
the wood
condo.
releases this
How she'd
stored
taken
energy
Jessica
gradually
on a
over
grief
many hours
vacation
and
to
even
Hawaii
days.
that cost
In the contemporary
$15,000.
house, walls
All of
consist
it.
of thin drywall,
Recorded. When I
plastic
finally
sheeting,
walked away,
fiberglass
I went straight to the
insulation,
bathroom
and exterior
and threw
cladding.
up.
Total
Then I
wall
called Richard.
assembly weight,
I have something.
maybe 8
I
pounds
said.
per linear
You're
foot.
not going to believe
There's
this.
essentially
Richard
zero mass
listened to the
available for
recording
heat storage.
3 times.
Insulation
Didn't say a
slows heat
word.
escape.
Just sat there in his office,
but it stores
headphones
absolutely
on, taking
nothing.
notes.
The
When
moment
he
your
finally
furnace
looked
cycles
up,
off,
his eyes
warmth
were
in
different.
the air escapes
Sharp,
through microscopic
hungry.
gaps and
This is
thermal
bankruptcy
bridges.
fraud.
Because
Clear
stick
as
frame
day.
construction
She
has no
testified
thermal
under
mass,
oath that she had
there's no
hidden
energy
assets.
reservoir to
This
sustain
recording
interior
proves
temperature.
she lied to
Ancient
a federal
builders
bankruptcy
grasped
court.
this principle
What does that
intuitively.
mean? It
They
means this
selected
isn't
trees
my
aged
jurisdiction
70 to
anymore.
90 years
This
minimum.
is federal.
Trees
FBI,
growing in
U.S.
harsh
Attorney's
northern
Office.
climates
Karen
develop
just committed a
extremely
felony
slowly.
on tape.
Growth
My
rings
hands were
pack
still
incredibly
shaking.
tight,
Will they prosecute?
sometimes
With
exceeding
evidence this
120
clear?
rings per inch.
Absolutely.
This
Bankruptcy
creates
fraud
extraordinarily
carries up to
dense,
5 years
heavy
in prison.
timber.
And
1
that's before
cubic
we
foot
talk
of
about the
old-growth
money
spruce
laundering
weighs over
implications
40
of
pounds.
offshore accounts.
Modern
How
fast-growth
long does
pine,
this take?
26
Depends.
pounds.
Could be
That
months.
density
Could be a
matters
year.
enormously.
Federal cases
Greater mass
move
equals
slowly.
greater storage
He leaned
capacity.
forward.
More
But
storage
here's what happens now.
means
I
extended
contact
thermal
the
lag
U.S.
time.
attorney.
It requires
open an
10 to 16
investigation.
hours for
They'll
external
subpoena her
cold
bank
to
records,
penetrate an
find those
11-inch
offshore
dense timber
accounts.
wall.
She won't
By
know
that
what hit
time,
her until
you've typically
agents
restarted
show
your
up at her
heat
door.
source.
I
The
want to be
cabin
there when she
functions like
finds
a
out.
massive
Richard
thermal
smiled.
battery,
Grim.
eliminating
I'll
temperature
see what I can do.
fluctuations.
The U.S.
But
Attorney's
mass
Office
alone
took
isn't
the case
sufficient.
within 2 weeks.
You also need
A
complete air
prosecutor
sealing.
named
This
Jennifer
reveals the
Hartley called
second
me
crucial
personally.
secret.
Mr.
Despite
Chun,
all our
this
advanced house
recording
wraps
is
and sealing
remarkable
tapes,
evidence.
contemporary
Clear admission
homes
of fraud,
leak like sieves.
hidden assets,
Blower door
even
testing
attorney
reveals the
involvement.
average
We're
modern
going to
house
bring
has
charges.
cumulative air leakage
When?
equivalent to
We need
leaving
to
a
build the
22
case
by
first.
18-inch
Trace the
window
money,
completely open.
verify the
This
offshore
isn't
accounts,
hyperbole.
interview
Combine
witnesses,
every gap around
figure out
electrical
how
boxes,
deep this goes.
trim work, and
Give us
window
3
frames.
months.
That's
Maybe
the hole
4.
you're trying to heat.
For months felt
When
like
it's 0
forever.
degrees outside,
But I waited.
frigid
During
air
that
pours
time,
through
Karen
continuously.
had no idea.
Your heating
She was
system
living her
isn't
life.
battling the walls.
I saw her
It's
Instagram.
fighting an invisible
Jessica's
open
account
portal.
was public.
The timber
Photos of
cabins
Karen
eliminated
at
this
expensive
problem.
restaurants.
Logs were
Shopping
joined using
trips.
scribe-fit
A
joinery.
weekend in Napa
Each log
Valley.
was individually
All funded by
shaped to
mom's
perfectly
stolen
match
money.
the log beneath
Every
it.
photo
This
made
process
me angrier.
took weeks of
In
skilled
January
labor.
2024,
A single room
3
could
months
require months
after the
to
funeral,
complete.
Jennifer
But the
called
outcome
again.
was a wall
We found
assembly
it.
with
All of it.
virtually no
She
air
has
infiltration.
$187,000
Then came the chinking
in a
process.
Cayman Islands account.
Gaps were filled
Another
with sphagnum moss harvested from
$43,000
wetlands.
in
This moss
cryptocurrency
absorbs
wallets.
up to
And
25
get
times
this,
its weight in
her lawyer
moisture.
Bradley Morrison
When
has
dried
his
and
own offshore
compressed,
accounts.
it expands
We think he's
into
been
every
doing this
tiny
with
crack.
multiple clients.
Over this,
So you
builders
have
applied
enough?
a mixture of
More
clay
than enough.
blended with
We're
animal
filing
fiber,
charges next
typically
week.
wool or goat
Bankruptcy
hair.
fraud,
The clay
wire
hardens
fraud,
to create
money
an
laundering.
airtight seal, while
Bradley's
the fiber
getting
acts like
charged separately.
reinforcement to
This is
prevent
gonna be
cracking.
big news.
It's a breathing system.
Can I be there?
Water
When you
vapor
arrest
can
her?
migrate through,
Silence.
but air
Then,
movement cannot
that's
occur.
unusual.
When scientists
But
test
given the
these
circumstances
500-year-old
and the fact
structures
that you're
today,
the victim here,
many achieve
I can
or
arrange for you
surpass
to be
modern
present
passive
when we
house
execute
airtightness
the search
standards.
warrant.
A
You won't be
dwelling
in the room,
constructed with
but you
hand
can be
tools
nearby.
and natural moss
Thank you.
outperforms
The
a
arrest
suburban home
happened on
built with
February
engineered
14th,
composites.
2024.
The third critical
Valentine's
element
Day.
is the
I
heating
didn't plan
strategy
that,
itself.
but it felt right
This
somehow.
is where things get
Jennifer
truly
and
fascinating.
2 FBI
We
agents
typically
met me
imagine old
3
cabins
blocks
with
from
open
Karen's
fireplaces,
condo
but
in San
open
Diego
fireplaces
at
are
6 a.m.
thermal catastrophes.
Cold morning.
They
Fog
pull
rolling
enormous
in from the
volumes
ocean.
of heated
We're
indoor
going in
air
at 6:30,
and blast it
Jennifer
straight up
said.
the chimney.
You'll stay in
A
the
big
car
open
with
fire
Agent
can
Martinez.
actually cool a house
When it's
by
over,
creating
if you
negative
wanna
air
see her,
pressure.
we can
Instead,
arrange a brief
Scandinavians used
I wanna
masonry
see her.
heaters called
At exactly
K-Clubs or
6:30
soapstone
a.m.,
stoves.
I watched
These
from the
are
car
substantial
as
units
Jennifer
constructed
and 4
from
agents
stone
walked
or
up
brick,
to Karen's building.
weighing multiple
They buzzed her
tons.
unit.
You burn
Waited.
an intense,
Buzzed again.
fast
Then they
fire
went in.
once or
15
twice
minutes
daily.
later, the door
Combustion
opened.
is complete
Karen came out in
and efficient.
handcuffs.
But
Hair
instead of
messy.
exhaust gases
No muck-up.
exiting directly,
Looking confused
they wind
and
through a
scared
maze
and
of
small.
channels within
She
the
saw
stone
the
mass.
FBI vehicles.
Heat transfers
Her
to the
face
stone
went
before
white.
gases
They
reach
put her in
the
the
chimney.
back of a black
By the
SUV.
time smoke exits
That's when she saw
outside,
me.
it's
Our
barely
eyes met
above
through the
ambient
car
temperature.
windows.
All
20
that
feet
thermal
apart.
energy is
She
captured
knew.
in the stone.
I saw it.
This
She
stone
knew I'd
mass
done
then
this.
radiates
Her
warmth
mouth
steadily
opened
for
like she was
10
going
to
to
16
scream
hours.
something. But
The
no
surface
sound came
temperature
out.
stays
Then
around
the SUV drove
135
away.
to
Agent
170
Martinez
degrees
turned to me.
Fahrenheit.
How do you
Warm
feel?
enough to feel
Empty,
comfortable,
I said.
but
And it was
safe
true.
for direct
I
contact.
thought I'd feel triumph.
You can sit against
Victory.
it. You can
Something.
even sleep beside
But all I
it.
felt was hollow.
The heat is
Mom
radiant,
was still dead.
meaning
David
it
was
warms
still dead.
objects and bodies,
The family was
not
still
merely
destroyed.
the air.
Karen going to prison
Radiant heating
wouldn't bring
creates
any of them
comfort
back.
at lower air
But it was
temperatures.
justice.
You feel
And
comfortable in
sometimes
58
justice is
degrees
all you
Fahrenheit
get.
air
Jennifer
if you're
walked
near
over to
a
my car.
155
We
degrees
recovered her
Fahrenheit
laptop,
stone mass.
phone,
A
financial
contemporary
documents.
forced air system
There's enough
must
here
heat air
to put
to
her
70
away for
degrees
years.
Fahrenheit
The
to achieve
arraignment
the
is
same
tomorrow.
comfort level.
If you want to
That
be there,
represents
you can sit
massive
in the
energy
gallery.
waste.
I'll be
A
there.
Swedish study
That night,
from
I called Linda.
2005
Told her
reconstructed a
everything.
traditional log
How do you
dwelling
feel? feel?
and
She
tested
asked.
it at
Same
minus
question
18
as
degrees
Agent
Fahrenheit.
Martinez.
A single
Like, I did what I had
90-minute
to do.
fire using
What Mom would have
approximately
wanted.
40
Your
pounds
mom
of
would
wood
be proud
maintained
of you.
interior
I don't know
temperatures
about that.
above
But at
57
least she know
degrees
I tried.
Fahrenheit for
I
over
protected
14
what
hours.
was left.
Fuel
And I made
consumption
sure
was
Karen
roughly
didn't get away
1/12
with it.
what a modern
That's all
home with
anyone
gas
can do,
heating would
Michael.
consume
I
in
sat
the
in the
same
dark for a
time frame.
long time after that
And
call.
this was
Thinking
achieved
about Mom.
without any
About the
modern
promise I
insulation
made.
technology.
About watching her
Just
die,
thermal
knowing
mass,
she'd been
air
betrayed by
sealing,
her own
and
daughter.
radiant heat
Karen had
working
called
together.
trust expensive.
Interior layout
She was
also
about to
played
find
a
out
massive
just how
role in
expensive.
efficiency.
The arraignment
Scandinavian
was February
cabins rejected
15th,
open concept design.
2024.
Modern
Day after
open
the
floor
arrest.
plans are
San
efficiency
Diego
nightmares.
Federal Courthouse.
Heated air
I
rises
got there an
and
hour
gets
early
trapped in
and
high
sat in
ceilings
the
while
back row of the
occupants
gallery.
freeze at
The
floor
courtroom
level.
filled up
Medieval
fast.
cabins featured low
Reporters,
ceilings,
other lawyers,
typically just 6.5
people who just wanted to
feet
watch
high.
someone rich fall.
Rooms were small
Karen's
and
case had
separated
made the
by
news.
solid doors.
Local real
This
estate
concentrated
agent charged
heat,
with
where people
defrauding
actually
dying
spent
mother
time.
was
The
the
central
headline
room
in
for
the San
cooking
Diego
and daily
Union Tribune.
activities
At
stayed
9
warmest.
a.m., they brought
Sleeping
Karen
rooms were
in.
cooler,
Orange
which didn't matter
jumpsuit,
because people
hands
slept
cuffed in
under
front,
heavy wool
hair pulled
blankets
back,
and furs.
no muck-up.
This thermal
She looked
zoning
10
strategy
years older than she
drastically
had at the
reduced heating
funeral.
requirements.
Her eyes
There was
scanned the
zero
courtroom,
need to
found
maintain
me,
and use
held
spaces
for
at
3
68
seconds.
degrees Fahrenheit.
Then she looked away.
We've completely
The judge was a
discarded this
man
logic
named
in our
Thomas
obsession
Brennan.
with
Maybe
expansive
60,
great rooms.
gray hair,
Then
expression
consider the
that said
foundation
he'd seen
approach.
everything
Many modern
and wasn't
American
impressed by
homes
any of it.
sit on
United
slab-on-grade
States
concrete.
versus Karen Marie
Concrete
Morrison,
functions
the clerk
as a
announced.
thermal bridge.
Jennifer
It
Hartley
pulls
stood.
heat from your living
The
space
government
and
is
dumps
ready,
it straight into
Your
frozen
Honor.
ground.
Karen's new lawyer
Scandinavian
stood too.
cabins were
Not
elevated
Bradley.
on stone
He was
piers
facing his
that
own
lifted
charges.
timber off the
This
earth.
was a public defender
This created an
named
air
Robert
gap
Hastings.
functioning as insulation.
Young guy.
Floors
looked
consisted
overwhelmed.
of thick planks,
Ms. Morrison,
often double
Judge
layered
Brennan
with sawdust
said,
or
"You're
moss
charged
packed
with
between.
bankruptcy fraud,
This eliminated
wire
the
fraud,
thermal bridge
and
completely.
money laundering.
No
Do you
heat
understand
bled
these
into the ground
charges?"
below.
Karen's
Every design
voice
detail
came out small.
focused on
Yes.
heat retention.
How do you plead?
So why did we
Silence.
abandon these
Long
proven
silence.
methods? 3
Ms.
primary
Morrison,
reasons:
not guilty.
speed, cost,
Barely a
and
whisper.
cheap fossil
The
fuels.
government requests
After World
remand,
War II,
Your Honor,
we needed
Jennifer
millions
said.
of houses
Ms.
immediately.
Morrison has access
Scribing
to hidden
logs
offshore
and hand-cutting
accounts
joints
and has
required
already
months.
demonstrated willingness
Stick framing with
to lie under
dimensional
oath.
lumber and
She's a
plywood took
significant
only
flight
weeks.
risk.
Labor
Your Honor,
costs were high,
my client has lived
so
in
materials
San Diego
needed
for
to be
20
inexpensive.
Years, Hastings
Thin
argued.
walls with
She
batt
has a daughter
insulation
here.
cost far
Community
less than
ties.
solid timber.
She's not going
Then
anywhere.
came the energy revolution.
Judge Brennan looked at
During
the
the
file.
1950s
The
and
government
60s,
has presented
oil
evidence
and
of
natural gas
offshore
were incredibly
accounts in the
cheap.
Cayman Islands.
Who cared about
Ms.
efficiency
Morrison has a
when you
passport,
could simply
and
turn
she's
up the
charged with
thermostat?
crimes that
We
carry
stopped designing for
significant prison
resilience
time.
and started
I'm inclined to
optimizing
agree
for
with
lowest
the
initial
government.
cost.
Your Honor,
We created
bail
houses
is
on
set
life
at
support,
$500,000
requiring
cash.
constant
If Ms.
energy
Morrison
input.
can post
Cut
that,
the supply,
she'll be
and they
released
fail
pending trial
immediately.
with GPS
But energy
monitoring
costs have
and surrender of a
skyrocketed.
passport.
Power grids are
Otherwise,
becoming
she remains in
increasingly
custody.
unstable.
Karen's face
People
crumbled.
are realizing
She
their
couldn't post
expensive homes are
$500,000.
actually extremely
All her money
fragile.
was frozen
Throughout
or
Europe,
seized.
particularly
Anything
in
else?
Germany,
Judge
Austria,
Brennan
and
asked.
Switzerland,
Your Honor,
there's a significant
Jennifer
movement
said.
returning
The
to
victim in
solid
this
timber
case,
construction
Michael
and mass
Chun,
timber
is
technology.
present. He'd
This
like to
isn't
make a brief
nostalgia,
statement
it's
for the
applied
record.
physics.
My stomach
Architects
dropped.
are merging
I hadn't
traditional
prepared
timber
anything.
principles with
Mr.
contemporary
Chun,
technology.
the judge looked at me.
Thick
I stood up,
cross-laminated timber
legs
panels,
shaking.
masonry
Your Honor,
heaters,
I just-
and
I want to
intelligent
say that my
compact
mother,
layouts.
Eleanor Chun,
They're
worked
achieving
for
dramatic
40
reductions
years
in
to
energy
save that money.
consumption.
She
A
trusted
properly
my
constructed
sister
solid
to help
timber
her
home
when she
can
was
operate
dying.
on
And my
one-third
sister
the
stole
energy
from
of
her.
conventional
Made
construction.
jokes about it.
And when
Called
power
her easy
fails,
to steal
it
from.
remains livable
My mother
for multiple
died,
days.
thinking at least
Scientific
some of her money
research
was
supports
protected.
these claims
She deserved
completely.
better than
A
this.
2019
Judge
study
Brennan
by the
nodded.
University
Thank
of
you, Mr.
Innsbruck
Chun.
monitored
I
solid
sat down,
timber houses
hands
versus
trembling.
conventional
Karen
builds
was
over
looking at me
5
again.
years. The
Tears
timber
running
homes
down her face
consumed
now.
38%
But I couldn't tell
less
if she was
heating
crying
energy during
because she
winter.
was sorry
In summer,
or
they
because she got
required
caught.
no air conditioning
Trial is
because
set for
thermal
June
mass
3rd,
buffered heat
Judge
gain.
Brennan said.
Residents
We're
reported
adjourned.
fewer drafts
The gavel
and
came
superior
down.
indoor
They took
air
Karen
quality.
out through
Would
side
naturally
door.
moderate
She didn't look
humidity,
back.
absorbing
Outside the
excess
courthouse,
moisture when
reporters
damp and
swarmed
releasing
me.
it when dry.
Mr. Chun,
No mold
how do you
problems.
feel about your sister's
No
arrest?
dry air
Do you
issues.
think she'll go to prison?
No
What would
noisy
your mother
mechanical
say if she was
humidifiers
here?
needed.
I pushed through
And
them.
there's another
Said
factor
nothing.
we rarely
Got in
discuss:
my car and drove.
longevity.
I didn't go home.
A contemporary
I
house
drove to
begins
Fresno,
deteriorating
to
the
Mom's
moment
old
construction
house.
finishes.
It was still empty,
Vapor barriers
waiting
tear.
to be sold. I had the
Fiberglass
keys.
settles
I
and
sat in
loses
her living room.
effectiveness.
Same room
Framing lumber
where she
rots
told
when
us
moisture
about the
penetrates
diagnosis.
behind siding.
Same room where
After
we'd
25
had
years,
that first
you're
conversation
facing
about the
major
will.
renovation
Fair
expenses.
and square.
Scandinavian
My phone
timber
buzzed.
cabins have
Text from
endured
Amy.
for
Saw the
500
news.
years.
You okay?
As timber
I
settles
typed
during the
back.
first few
Yeah,
years,
it's done.
joints
We're starting to
actually
be
become
done.
tighter.
Proud of you.
A
Your mom will
40-year-old
be
log
too.
home home
Would
often
she?
performs
Mom
better
had hated
than a
conflict,
brand new one.
hated family
It's an
drama.
asset that
Would she be
improves
proud
with age,
that I'd put her
while
daughter
modern
in jail?
construction
Or would she be
depreciates from day
heartbroken
one.
that it came
If
to
you're
this?
planning to build
I
or
never know.
renovate a home
Another
today for
text.
resilience,
This one from a number I
efficiency,
didn't
and
recognize.
longevity,
You
adopt these
destroyed our
principles.
family.
You don't
I
need
hope
to
you're
live in a
happy.
medieval structure,
Jessica.
but you
Had to
can
be.
incorporate
I
thermal
deleted
mass.
it. Blocked
Investigate
the number.
mass timber
Then I
or
called
solid
Linda.
log
It's
construction
over,
options.
I said.
If
The
solid
arraignment.
timber walls
She's in
aren't
jail.
feasible,
Can't post
integrate
bail.
stone mass
Good.
internally.
Is it good?
A masonry
still my
heater or
sister.
substantial
And she's sitting
stone
in a cell
fireplace
right
surround
now.
can serve
She's sitting
as
in
your
a cell
thermal battery.
because she stole from your dying
Prioritize
mother.
complete air
Don't you
sealing.
dare feel guilty
Invest
about
in
this.
professional
I
blower
don't
door
feel
testing
guilty.
and seal
I feel
every leak
tired.
meticulously.
Come home, Michael.
This delivers
You've done
more
enough.
value than
Let
adding
the
extra
lawyers handle the
insulation
rest.
layers.
She was
Design
right.
for
I
compactness.
done my part.
Eliminate
Recorded the
cathedral
confession.
ceilings if
Gave it to the
efficiency
feds.
matters to you.
Showed up at court.
Lower
The
ceilings
rest was
and
out of my
closable
hands.
rooms concentrate
But as I locked
heat
up Mom's
where
house
you
and
actually
drove
are.
away,
Implement
I kept seeing
thermal
Karen's
zoning
face in that
strategies.
courtroom.
Heat your
Orange
living spaces
jumpsuit.
actively.
Tears.
Allow sleeping
Looking
areas
small
to remain
and scared.
cooler.
She
And
called
think
Mom
long-term
easy
value.
to steal from.
A house
Now she'd
costing
find out what
$60,000
easy
more
really
to
meant.
construct,
Karen
but
spent
saving you
3.5 months in
$120,000
jail
in
waiting for
utilities
trial.
and maintenance
She
over
couldn't post
30
bail.
years is
No
the
one would help her.
intelligent investment.
Not Jessica.
Modern building
Not her
codes
friends.
obsess over our
Not anyone.
values and
The
upfront
trial started
construction
on
costs.
June 3rd,
They completely
2024.
ignore resilience
Same
and
courthouse.
life cycle value.
Same judge.
The
But
Scandinavian
this time the
farmer in his
gallery was
13th
packed.
century cabin
Media,
wasn't primitive
family
or
members
backward.
I hadn't seen
He was a
in years.
master of practical
People
physics.
from Mom's church.
He understood
Everyone
that
wanted to see
heat
how it
requires
ended.
mass for
I sat in the
storage.
front row
He
behind
knew
the
air
prosecution
infiltration
table.
is the real
Jennifer
enemy,
had asked
not
me to be
cold
there
itself.
every day.
He knew
Juries
radiant
respond
heat
to victims,
outperforms
she'd
forced
said.
air
I
fundamentally.
need to see you.
And
See
he
what this
knew
did
working
to your
with natural
family.
principles
Day
beats
one
fighting
was
them
jury
with mechanical
selection.
systems.
12 people
We
who'd
exchanged
never heard
that
of Eleanor
accumulated
Chung
wisdom
or
for
Karen
construction
Morrison.
speed
By the end
and
of the day,
cheap fossil
we had our
fuel
jury.
energy.
7
Now
women,
that energy
5
is
men.
expensive and
Ages
climate
ranging from
patterns are
mid-20s
becoming more
to
extreme,
late 60s.
we're paying the price for
Day
that trade.
2.
If you
Opening
found this
statements.
information valuable,
Jennifer stood up
hit that
first.
like button
She
and
was good.
subscribe.
Really good.
We're
Walked the
uncovering
jury
forgotten
through
knowledge that the
everything.
modern construction
Mom's
industry
diagnosis.
doesn't want
Karen
widely
gaining
known.
access
The medieval
to the
timber
accounts.
cabin wasn't
The
accidental
systematic
or
theft.
lucky.
The
It
bankruptcy.
represented
The
centuries
offshore
of
accounts.
experimentation
The recording.
and refinement.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Structures
this
that
case
failed
is about
harsh winters
betrayal.
were abandoned
A daughter who
and
saw
forgotten.
her mother's terminal
Designs
illness
that succeeded
not
were
as a
copied
tragedy,
and improved.
but as an opportunity.
What survived
Who
was a
stole
building system so effective it protected
$438,000
families
from a
through
dying
minus
woman,
40
who
degrees
laughed about it
Fahrenheit
at her
winters
mother's
with
funeral,
zero
who
electricity
hid the money in
and
offshore
zero
accounts
natural gas.
and lied
These
to a
people
federal
worked
bankruptcy
14-hour
court.
days,
She
built
pointed to Karen,
civilizations,
the
and
defendant
raised
gambled
families
that
successfully.
no one would catch
They
her.
weren't weak
She
or
was wrong.
struggling.
Robert
They were strong
Hastings,
because their
Karen's
homes
lawyer,
actually
tried
sheltered
his
them
best.
instead of demanding
He argued
constant
that
energy
Karen had
and
been
money.
under financial
This
stress,
knowledge
that
wasn't
she'd
lost
intended
forever.
to pay the money back.
It was simply
That the
buried under
offshore
marketing
accounts were
hype
set
and
up
short-term
on
profit
bad legal
thinking.
advice from
Every
Bradley
time you build
Morrison.
with thermal
That she
mass,
loved her mother
seal air
and
leaks
never meant to
properly,
hurt her.
and use radiant
My
heating,
client made mistakes.
you're reviving that wisdom.
She acknowledges
Wisdom that kept
but
people
mistakes aren't
alive
crimes.
and comfortable
The
when the world
prosecution
was
wants you to
unforgiving.
believe Karen
Wisdom
Morrison
that
is
still
a
works
monster.
today.
She's
Drop your
not.
comments
She's
below
a
about your
flawed human
experiences
being
with
who
winter
made
power
bad
outages.
choices during an
Have you
impossibly
tested your home's
difficult time.
thermal resilience?
I watched the jury.
Share your
They
story
weren't buying
and
it.
let's learn
Day
from each other.
3.
And
Jennifer
if
played
you want to
the
dive
recording.
deeper into these
The
building
courtroom
principles,
went silent.
check out the
You
resources
could
I've
hear
linked below.
every word.
This is
Karen's
knowledge
voice,
worth spreading.
clear as day.
Knowledge
I
that
took
could
what I
save
deserved.
lives and
Almost
fortunes.
$500,000. Mom
Knowledge
would've
that
blown
builds
it on
true
medical bills
resilience
anyway.
into your home.
Mom was so
Thanks for
easy.
watching,
Like
and
taking
I'll see
candy
you in the
from a
next one.
dying, confused
We've lost
baby.
something critical in
Trust
modern
is
construction.
expensive.
Back
She
in
paid for hers.
1869,
When it
engineers
finished,
studied the Hattel
silence
Stave
lasted
Church
10
in Norway
seconds.
during a
Then
record-breaking
murmuring.
winter. The
The jury
temperature
looked
outside
shocked.
had dropped
One
to
woman in the
minus
back row was
35
crying.
degrees Fahrenheit.
Karen sat at the defense
Snow
table
covered
with her
everything
head
for
down,
miles.
not moving,
Winds tore
not
through the
looking at
mountains
anyone.
with enough
Jennifer
power to
called
destroy
witnesses
any
next.
modern tent.
First was
But
the
inside
forensic
this timber
accountant who
church
traced the
constructed
money.
in
He
1150
walked the
without
jury
any
through
heating system,
every withdrawal,
without insulation,
every
and
transfer,
without modern
every
windows,
hidden account.
the temperature
It took
remained
2
at
hours.
48
By the
degrees
end,
Fahrenheit.
the numbers were
No
overwhelming.
fire was lit.
Then Amy
No
testified,
energy was being consumed.
explained how she
The building
reached out
itself,
to me, how she
constructed
connected
from
me with
dense
Richard,
timber using
how
forgotten
she'd seen this
techniques,
pattern before in
maintained
her
thermal
work.
stability.
Then Teresa,
Now think
the
about a
hospice
typical
nurse.
American home
She
today.
talked about Mom's
Turn off your
mental
heating
state,
when it's
the
10
medication,
degrees Fahrenheit
the
outside.
confusion.
In
How
just
Mom had
4
asked
hours,
about her money
your indoor temperature
constantly toward
plummets
the
below
end.
40
Did
degrees
Eleanor
Fahrenheit.
Chung seem
Within
like
8
someone
hours,
capable
you're approaching approaching freezing.
authorizing
After 18 hours, you risk frozen pipes and structural damage.
Jennifer asked.
The house
No,
becomes dangerous.
absolutely not.
What
She
knowledge
could barely
did
remember
ancient
what
builders
day it
possess
was
that
most
we've
of the time.
abandoned?
Then it was my
Across the
turn.
Nordic mountains,
I've been dreading
hundreds
this.
of timber
Talking
centuries
about law,
remain intact
about
today.
Karen,
These
about
buildings have
everything.
lasted
Jennifer
through centuries
walked
of
me
punishment.
through it gently.
They've
What
withstood
did I notice
winters
money
that would
missing?
destroy
What
a
did Karen
contemporary
say?
frame
How did
house
Mom
in mere
react?
weeks.
What was on the
They
recording?
accomplished this
I
using
answered
three
every
fundamental
question.
principles
Try to keep my
completely
voice
absent
steady.
from modern building
Try not to
codes.
cry.
thermal
Then
mass
Hastings
storage,
cross-examined
complete air
me.
sealing,
Mr.
and
Chung,
heating systems
you and your
designed
sister
around
have
energy
never
storage
gotten
rather
along,
than
have you?
constant fuel
We
burning.
weren't close.
These weren't separate
In fact,
tricks.
you
They
resented
worked
her,
together
didn't you?
as one integrated system.
You resented that
Pure
she was
physics
successful,
applied correctly,
that she made more
working
money
alongside
than you,
natural
that your
forces
mother seemed
instead
to
of fighting
favor
them.
her.
Today's
That's not
construction
true.
fights
Isn't it
against
true that
basic
you saw your mother's
thermodynamics.
illness
We
as an
combat
opportunity
cold with
to
endless
cut your
energy
sister
input,
out of the
and we're
inheritance?
failing badly.
I stared
Before
at
we
him.
continue,
My sister
leave a
stole from
comment
our
below.
dying mother.
Have you
That's not
experienced a
resentment.
winter power outage?
That's fact.
How
Your
long
Honor,
did your home retain
Hastings
heat?
said.
2
The
hours,
witness is being
8 hours,
non-responsive.
or was
I'll
it
allow
freezing
it,
within
Judge
minutes?
Brennan said.
Share your
Move
story,
on, counselor.
because what comes
Hastings tried
next
a
will
few more
transform your
angles.
understanding of modern
Suggested
buildings.
I'd manipulated
Let's go back
Mom
to
into
2012.
signing the affidavit.
Researchers at the
Suggested
Technical
the
University of
recording
Norway
was taken out of
conducted a
context.
fascinating test.
Suggested I
They
was
used
motivated
two
by
identical
greed.
sized structures,
None of it landed.
each
The jury
approximately
could see
400
through
square
it.
feet.
When I stepped
Structure
down,
1
my
was an
legs were
authentic
shaking.
medieval timber
I'd done
cabin
it.
built to
Day
13th
4, the
century
prosecution
specifications.
They'd proven
Solid timber
everything.
logs measuring
The theft,
11 inches in
the
diameter,
bankruptcy fraud,
hand-fitted
the
with
hidden
precision
accounts,
joinery.
all of it.
Zero
Now,
modern
it was the
insulation.
Plastic
Hastings
barriers.
called character
No
witnesses.
synthetic
People
materials
who'd known
whatsoever.
Karen for years.
Structure 2
Friends,
was a
former
contemporary
clients. They
prefabricated
talked
dwelling
about how
built to current
generous
strict
she
energy
was,
regulations.
how she'd help people buy
Heavy
homes,
insulation rated
how she was a good mother
23.
to Jessica.
Multiple
It felt
vapor
hollow,
barriers.
like putting a
Triple
nice
pane
frame
windows.
on a poisonous
On
painting.
any building,
Then looking small.
both were warmed
tired,
to a comfortable
broken.
70
Hastings
degrees
walked
Fahrenheit.
her through a version.
Then researchers
Yes,
shut down
she'd
all
taken money
heating.
from Mom's
The
accounts,
contemporary house
but she'd
dropped
been under
to 32
enormous
degrees Fahrenheit
financial
in just
stress.
7 hours.
2 divorces
The timber
had destroyed
cabin,
her savings.
after 4
Emissions
internal
were
temperature
down.
held
She had
at
a mortgage.
56 degrees
Jessica
Fahrenheit.
needed help with bills.
After 72
I
hours,
told myself
3
I'd pay
complete
it back.
days with zero
Karen
heat
said,
input.
her voice
It still
cracking.
measured
That's where I
45
meant
degrees
to.
Fahrenheit,
When Mom died
safely
and the
above
estate
freezing.
settled,
The
I'd
modularly
climb.
lethal
Did you
freezer,
love your
while
mother?
the ancient
Hastings
cabin
asked.
remained completely
Yes,
habitable.
so much.
How is this
She was
possible?
everything to
A
me.
typical
Do you
engineer
regret
today
what
would
happened?
call this
Every
result
day,
impossible.
every single day.
The timber
I made
cabin's R
terrible
value
mistakes.
sits around 9.
I hurt my mother.
The contemporary
I hurt my
house
brother.
boasts are
I destroyed
23.
my family. I wish I
Higher
could
R
take it
value
all back.
equals superior
She was crying
insulation by
now.
definition.
Real tears.
The modern house
The
should
jury
dominate
watched.
this test,
Then
right?
Jennifer
But
stood up
R
for
value only
cross-examination.
accounts for heat
Ms.
transfer
Morrison,
under steady
you
conditions.
testified that you
It
intended to pay the
completely
money
disregards
back.
thermal
Is that
mass.
correct? Yes.
And thermal mass
Then why did you hide
changes
it in
everything
offshore
fundamentally.
accounts? Pause.
An 11-inch
My
thick
lawyer
wall of
suggested.
old-growth spruce
Your lawyer
weighs
suggested you commit
approximately
bankruptcy
75
fraud?
pounds per
He
linear
said it
foot,
was legal asset
which possesses
protection.
exceptional
Asset
specific
protection
heat
from what?
capacity,
From having to
allowing it
return
to store
stolen money to
tremendous
your mother's
amounts of
estate.
thermal energy.
It wasn't like that.
When you heat the cabin,
Jennifer pulled out
the
a
timber
document.
absorbs that
This
warmth
is your
deep
bankruptcy
into its
filing
cellular
from
structure.
November 2022.
When heating stops,
You signed under
the wood
penalty
releases
of
this
perjury
stored
that you
energy
had no
gradually
hidden
over
assets.
many hours
Correct.
and even
Yes.
days.
But you
In the
did have hidden
contemporary
assets.
house, walls consist of thin drywall,
$30,000 in the Cayman
plastic
Islands
sheeting,
and cryptocurrency.
fiberglass insulation,
Correct.
and
Yes.
exterior cladding.
So you lied
Total
under
wall
oath.
assembly weight,
I was advised.
maybe 8
yes
pounds
or no,
per linear foot.
Ms. Morrison.
There's
Did you
essentially
lie under
zero
oath?
mass available
Karen's
for
face
heat
crumpled.
storage.
Yes.
Insulation slows
Let's talk
heat
about the
escape.
recording.
Sure,
You remember the
but
day
it
of your
stores
mother's funeral?
absolutely nothing.
Yes.
The moment your
You were
furnace
recorded
cycles
saying, and I
off, warmth
quote,
in the air
"Mom
escapes
was
through
so
microscopic
easy,
gaps and
like
thermal
taking
bridges.
candy from a dying,
Because stick frame
confused
construction
baby.
has no
Do
thermal
you remember
mass,
saying that?
there's no energy
Silence.
reservoir to
Ms.
sustain
Morrison,
interior
I was
temperature.
upset. I
Ancient
said
builders
things I didn't
grasped
mean.
this principle
You were
intuitively.
upset at your mother's
They
funeral,
selected
so you
trees
bragged
aged
about
70
stealing
to
from her?
90 years
I wasn't
minimum.
bragging.
Trees
You
growing
said,
in
"Trust is
harsh
expensive."
northern climates
She paid
develop
for hers.
extremely slowly.
What did you mean by that?
Growth rings
I don't-
pack
I was
incredibly
trying
tight,
to sound tough.
sometimes
To my friends,
exceeding
I
120
didn't mean-
rings per inch.
You didn't mean that your
This
dying mother
creates
paid for
extraordinarily
trusting you with
dense,
her life savings?
heavy timber.
Karen
1
broke
cubic foot
down
of
completely,
old-growth spruce
sobbing.
weighs over
Couldn't
40
speak.
pounds.
Judge
Modern
Brennan called a
fast-growth
recess.
pine,
When court
26
resumed,
pounds.
Jennifer
That
continued.
density matters
She walked
enormously.
Karen through every
Greater
lie,
mass equals
every
greater
withdrawal,
storage capacity.
every excuse.
More storage
By the end,
means
Karen
extended
looked
thermal lag
destroyed.
time.
The jury
It
looked
requires
angry.
10 to 16
Day 5
hours
was
for external
closing
cold
arguments.
to penetrate
Hastings
an
tried to
11-inch
salvage
dense
it.
timber wall.
Talked about redemption.
By that time,
Seconde
you've
chance.
typically restarted
How
your heat
Karen
source.
had already lost
The cabin
everything.
functions like a massive
career,
thermal battery,
her reputation,
eliminating
her
temperature
family.
fluctuations.
Prison won't undo
But
what
mass
happened,
alone
he
isn't
said.
sufficient.
It won't bring
You also
Eleanor
need
Chen
complete air
back.
sealing. ceiling.
It won't
This
heal
reveals
this
the
family.
second
It will
crucial
only
secret.
destroy another
Despite
life.
all our
My
advanced
client
house
needs help,
wraps and
not
ceiling
punishment.
tapes,
Then
contemporary
Jennifer
homes
stood.
leak like
The defense
seeds.
wants you to
Blower
feel
door
sympathy
testing
for
reveals the
Karen
average
Morrison.
modern house
And maybe
has
you do.
cumulative air
Maybe you
leakage
feel
equivalent
sorry
to
for
leaving a
someone who made
22 by
mistakes.
18-inch
But let me
window
remind you what
completely
those
open.
mistakes were.
This isn't
She pulled up a
hyperbole.
photo of Mom.
Combine
One
every
from
gap
before she
around
got
electrical
sick.
boxes,
Smiling.
trim work, and
Healthy.
window frames.
Alive.
That's the
This
hole you're trying
is
to
Eleanor
heat.
Chun,
When it's
a
0
woman who
degrees
worked 40
outside,
years to
frigid
save
air pours through
$1.8
continuously.
million.
Your heating system
Who
isn't
survived
battling the
cancer
walls.
longer than
It's
anyone
fighting an
expected
invisible
through
open
sheer
portal.
will.
The
Who
timber
trusted her
cabins
daughter
eliminated
to help
this problem.
her in her final
Logs were
months.
joined
And
using
that daughter
Scribe Fit
stole from
joinery.
her.
Each
Called her
log
easy,
was individually
laughed about
shaped
it,
to
hid the
perfectly
money,
match the log
lied to
beneath
federal
it.
court,
This
and
process
only
took
showed
weeks of
remorse when she
skilled
got
labor.
caught.
A
Jennifer
single room
looked at the
could
jury.
require months to
This
complete.
isn't about mistakes.
But the outcome was
This
a
is
wall
about
assembly
choices.
with
Karen
virtually
Morrison
no air
chose to
infiltration.
steal from her dying
Then
mother.
came the chinking
Chose
process.
to hide the money.
Gaps were
Chose to
filled
lie
with
under oath.
sphagnum moss
And
harvested
now
from
she
wetlands.
has to face the
This moss
consequences
absorbs
of those
up to
choices.
25 times
She
its
sat
weight
down.
in moisture.
The jury
When
deliberated
dried
for
and
3
compressed,
hours.
it
When they
expands
came
into
back,
every tiny
the
crack.
forewoman stood.
Over this,
On the count
builders
of
applied a
bankruptcy
mixture of
fraud,
clay
we
blended
find the
with animal
defendant
fiber,
guilty. On
typically
the
wool
count of
or
wire
goat hair.
fraud,
The
we
clay
find the
hardens to
defendant
create an
guilty.
airtight
On the
seal while
count
the
of money
fiber acts
laundering,
like
we find the
reinforcement to
defendant
prevent cracking.
guilty.
It's a
Karen
breathing
collapsed
system.
into her chair.
Water vapor
Hastings
can
put a
migrate
hand
through,
on her
but
shoulder.
air movement
Judge
cannot
Brennan
occur.
thanked the
When
jury and
scientists
set
test these
sentencing for
500-year-old
August 1st,
structures today,
2024.
many achieve
I walked
or
out of the
surpass
courthouse
modern
in a
passive
daze.
house airtightness
Reporters
standards.
shouted questions.
A dwelling
I
constructed
ignored
with
them.
hand
Amy
tools
caught up
and
with me on
natural
the
moss
steps.
outperforms
You
a
did it.
suburban home
You actually
built
did
with
it.
engineered
Yeah,
composites.
I said, but I
The
didn't
third
feel
critical
victorious.
element is the
I
heating
felt
strategy
hollow,
itself.
empty.
This is where
sad.
things get
Karen was
truly
guilty.
fascinating.
She'd go to
Combustion
orange
is
jumpsuit.
complete and
She'd
efficient.
been in jail for almost
But instead
6
of
months
exhaust
now.
gases
She
exiting
looked
directly,
different,
they
thinner,
wind through
grayer,
a maze of channels
older.
within the
She
stone
didn't look
mass.
at me. Judge
Heat then radiates
Mr.
warmth
Chun,
steadily
would you
for
like to make
10
a
to
statement?
16 hours.
I stood up.
The surface
walked
temperature
to the
stays
podium.
around
My hands were
135
shaking
to
again.
170
Your Honor,
degrees
my
Fahrenheit.
name is Michael Chun.
Warm enough
Eleanor
to feel
Chun
comfortable,
was my mother.
but
I
safe
looked at the
for
paper I'd
direct
written,
contact.
crumpled from
You
being
can sit
folded
against it.
and unfolded
You can even sleep
a dozen
beside it.
times.
The heat
My mom
is
died
radiant,
on August 23rd,
meaning it warms objects and
2022.
bodies,
The same
not
day
merely
we won
the
in
air.
court to
Radiant
freeze her
heating
accounts.
creates
The
comfort
same
at
day,
lower air
she
temperatures.
asked me if we won.
You
I
feel
told her
comfortable
yes.
in 58
She
degrees
smiled.
Fahrenheit air
Then she died.
if you're near a
My voice
155
cracked. I
degrees
steadied
Fahrenheit
myself.
stone mass.
My sister
A
took
contemporary forced air system must
$438,000
heat
from her.
air to
But
70
she took more
degrees
than money.
Fahrenheit to
She took
achieve the
Mom's
same
peace,
comfort level.
her dignity.
That
Her
represents
final months were
massive
spent
energy
worrying
waste.
about bills
A Swedish
instead of
study
saying
from
goodbye
2005
to the people she
reconstructed a
loved.
traditional log
Mom
dwelling
died
and
knowing
tested
her
it
own
at
daughter
minus
had
18
betrayed her.
degrees Fahrenheit.
That's what hurts the most.
A single
Not the
90-minute
money,
fire using
the betrayal.
approximately 40
I looked at
pounds of
Karen.
wood maintained
She was
interior
staring at the
temperatures
table.
above
I don't hate my
57
sister.
degrees
I
Fahrenheit
wish I
for
did.
over
It would
14
be
hours.
easier.
Fuel
But I don't.
consumption was
I just-
roughly
I don't
1/12
understand
what a
her.
modern home
How you
with
can look
gas
at
heating
someone
would
who's
consume
dying
in the
and
same
see a
time frame.
payday.
And
How you can
this
laugh
was
about it
achieved
at their
without
funeral.
any modern
How you can call
insulation
them
technology.
easy to steal
Just
from.
thermal mass,
Judge Brennan
air
was
sealing,
watching me
and
carefully.
radiant heat
My
working
mom
together.
worked for 40 years.
Interior layout also
Saved
played a
every
massive
penny.
role in
Denied
efficiency.
herself things
Scandinavian
so we'd have
cabins
something
rejected
when she
open
was gone.
concept design.
And my sister stole
Modern
it.
open floor
Not
plans
because
are
she was
efficiency
desperate.
nightmares.
The forensic
Heated air
accountant showed
rises
us
and gets
where the
trapped
money
in
went.
high ceilings
New
while
car,
occupants
condo
freeze at
renovations,
floor level.
Vacations,
Medieval cabins featured
shopping.
low ceilings,
She stole it
typically
because she
just
wanted
6.5
it. Because
feet high.
she could.
Rooms were
Because
small
Mom
and
trusted
separated
her.
by solid
I
doors.
folded the paper.
This
Looked at
concentrated
Judge
heat,
Brennan.
where people
I'm not
actually
asking
spent
you
time.
to destroy my
The central
sister's
room
life.
for cooking
Prison will
and
do
daily
that already.
activities stayed
I'm just
warmest.
asking you to remember
Sleeping
my mom.
rooms were cooler,
Remember that she
which
was a
didn't
real
matter
person.
because people
A good
slept
person
under heavy wool
who deserved
blankets
better
and
than
fur.
this.
This
Thank
thermal
you.
zoning
I sat
strategy
down.
drastically
Linda squeezed
reduced
my
heating
hand.
requirements.
Judge Brennan
There was
nodded.
zero
Thank
need to
you, Mr.
maintain
Chun.
and use
Ms.
spaces
Morrison,
at
do you
68
wish to make a
degrees
statement?
Fahrenheit.
Karen
We've
stood,
completely discarded disregarded this
slowly
logic
to the
in our
podium.
obsession with
Her lawyer
expansive
stood with
great
her.
rooms.
She looked small.
Then consider the
broken.
foundation approach.
Your Honor,
Many
Her
modern
voice
American
was
homes
barely audible.
sit on
I don't know what to
slab-on-grade
say.
concrete.
I've thought about
Concrete
this every
functions
day
as a thermal
for 2
bridge.
years.
It
Every
pulls
day.
heat from your living
And I still
space
don't
and
understand
dumps it
how I do
straight
this.
into frozen ground.
She wiped her eyes.
Scandinavian
My
cabins
brother's
were
right.
elevated
Everything
on
he
stone
said is
piers
true.
that lifted
I stole
timber
from my
off
mother.
the earth.
I betrayed
This
her.
created an
I
air
betrayed
gap
him.
functioning
I
as
destroyed
insulation.
our family.
Floors
And for
consisted
what?
of thick
A
planks,
car I don't even have
often
anymore.
double-layered with
Renovations
sawdust
on a
or
condo
moss
that's
packed
been
between.
foreclosed.
This
Trips I
eliminated
can
the
barely
thermal bridge
remember.
completely.
She looked at
No
me.
heat bled
First
into the
time
ground
since
below.
the trial started.
Every design
Michael,
detail,
I'm
focused
sorted.
on heat
I
retention.
know that doesn't fix
So
anything.
why did we
I know you
abandon
probably
these
hate
proven
me.
methods?
You should hate me.
3
I
primary
hate
reasons.
myself.
Speed,
What I did was
cost,
unforgivable.
and cheap fossil fuels.
Mom trusted me.
After World
and
War
I.
II,
She
we
broke
needed
down,
millions of
sobbing.
houses immediately.
I can't take it back.
Scribing
I'd
logs
give anything
and
to take it
hand-cutting
back.
joints
But I
required
can't.
months.
Judge
Stick
Brennan
framing
waited.
with
Let her
dimensional
compose
lumber
herself.
and plywood
I
took
was
only
jealous,
weeks.
Karen continued.
Labor costs were
Of
high,
you were
so
always the good
materials
kid,
needed to be
the one
inexpensive.
who did everything right.
Thin walls with
Became a
that insulation
firefighter.
cost far
Married
less
Linda.
than solid timber.
Stayed close to Mom.
Then came the
And I was
energy
screw-up.
revolution.
2 divorces.
During the 1950s
Career
and 60s,
barely hanging
oil
on.
and natural
Always
gas
struggling.
were incredibly
And when Mom
cheap.
got sick,
Who cared
you
about
dropped
efficiency
everything.
when you
Moved
could
in,
simply
took
turn
care
up the
of her,
thermostat?
did everything.
We stopped
And
designing
I
for
couldn't
resilience
compete
and
with
started
that. So I
optimizing
took
for
the money.
lowest initial
Not because
cost.
I needed it.
We created
Because it was
houses
the
on
only
life
way I
support,
could feel like I mattered.
requiring
Like I
constant
had
energy
something you
input.
didn't.
Cut the
courtroom was
supply,
silent.
and they fail
That's
immediately.
sick. I know
But
it's
energy
sick.
costs
I've
have
had a lot of time
skyrocketed.
to think in jail.
Power grids
a lot
are
of
becoming
therapy,
increasingly
and I finally
unstable.
understand that I've been
People
broken
are
for a long
realizing their
time.
expensive
Long before
homes
Mom
are
got
actually
sick.
extremely
Maybe my whole
fragile.
life. And
Throughout
instead
Europe,
of fixing myself,
particularly in Germany,
I hurt the
Austria,
people who
and
loved me.
Switzerland,
She
there's a
turned to Judge
significant
Brennan.
movement
I
returning
don't
to
expect
solid
mercy.
timber construction
I don't deserve
and
it.
mass timber
I
technology.
just want Michael to know that I'm
This
sorry.
is a nostalgia.
I'm so
It's applied
sorry.
physics.
And I want
Architects
all
are
Mom to
merging
know,
traditional timber
wherever she
principles
is,
with
I'm
contemporary
sorry.
technology.
She sat
Thick
down,
cross-laminated
still
timber
crying.
panels,
Judge
masonry
Brennan
heaters,
looked at his
and
papers.
intelligent
Took
compact
his time.
layouts.
I've been a
They're
federal
achieving
judge
dramatic
for 22
reductions
years,
in energy
he
consumption.
said finally.
A properly
sentenced
constructed
hundreds of
solid timber home
defendants,
can operate
murderers,
on one-third
drug
the energy
dealers,
of conventional
fraudsters.
construction.
And I've
And
learned
when
that
power
people
fails,
commit crimes
it remains
for all
livable
sorts
for
of
multiple
reasons.
days.
Desperation,
Scientific research
addiction,
supports these
greed,
claims completely.
sometimes just
A
stupidity.
2019
He looked
study
at
by the
Karen.
University
Your
of
case
Innsbruck
is
monitored
different.
solid
You
timber
didn't steal
houses
from a
versus
stranger.
conventional
You
builds
stole
over
from a
5
dying
years.
mother.
The
You
timber
didn't
homes
steal because
consumed
you were
38% less
Your
heating
financial
energy during
records
winter.
show you were making
In summer,
decent money.
they required
You
no air
stole because you
conditioning
felt
because
entitled.
thermal mass
Because you
buffered heat
could.
gain.
Because she
Residents
trusted
reported
you.
fewer drafts
Karen kept
and
her head
superior
down.
indoor
The
air
recording
quality.
from your mother's
With
funeral
naturally
is one of the
moderate
most
humidity,
disturbing pieces
absorbing
of
excess
evidence I've
moisture
heard in
when
my
damp
career.
and releasing
Not
it when
because
dry.
of what you took.
No mold
because
problems.
of how you talked about it.
No dry
Easy
air
to
issues.
steal from.
No
Like
noisy
taking
mechanical
candy from a baby.
humidifiers needed.
Those words show
And there's
a
another
profound
factor
lack
we
of
rarely
empathy.
discuss:
A profound
longevity.
moral failure.
A contemporary
He paused.
house begins
Your
deteriorating
apology
the moment
today
construction
seems
finishes.
sincere.
Vapor
Maybe it
barriers
is.
tear.
Maybe you've had an
Fiberglass
awakening in
settles
jail.
and
Maybe
loses
therapy
effectiveness.
has helped you understand your
Framing
actions.
lumber rots when
But
moisture
apologies don't
penetrates
undo
behind
harm.
siding.
They don't return the
After
money.
25 years,
They don't give
you're
Eleanor
facing
Chun her
major
final
renovation
months back.
expenses.
They don't heal
Scandinavian
the family
timber
you destroyed.
cabins have endured
Judge
for
Brennan looked at
500
the
years.
sentencing guidelines.
As timber settles
The
during the
guidelines
first few
recommend
years,
41
joints
to 51
actually become
months
tighter.
in prison.
A
The government has
40-year-old
asked for
log
the
home
maximum.
often
Your
performs
attorney has
better
asked for
than
the
a
minimum
brand new one.
with credit
It's
for
an
time
asset
served.
that improves
He
with
looked up.
age,
I'm going to
while
impose a
modern
sentence
construction
of 48
depreciates from
months.
day one.
For years.
If you're planning to
You'll
build
serve
or renovate a home
85%
today
of
for
that,
resilience,
roughly 3
efficiency,
years
and
5
longevity,
months,
adopt
followed
these
by
principles.
3 years of
You don't need to
supervised
live in a
release.
medieval structure,
You'll also
but
be
you can
required
incorporate
to
thermal
pay
mass.
full restitution
Investigate
of
mass timber or solid log construction
$438,000
options.
to the estate
If solid
of
timber
Eleanor
walls
Chun.
aren't
If you
feasible,
can't pay it,
integrate
the debt will
stone
follow
mass
you for the rest
internally.
of your life.
A masonry
Karen's
heater or
shoulders
substantial
shook.
stone
You'll report
fireplace
to
surround
FCI
can serve
Dublin in
as your
California
thermal
within
battery.
30 days.
Prioritize
Your attorney
complete
will
air
receive
sealing.
the paperwork.
Invest
The gavel
in
came
professional
down.
blower door
Court
testing
is
and
adjourned.
seal
Guards
every
came to
leak
take Karen
meticulously.
away. She looked
This
back at me
delivers
one
more
last time.
value than
I didn't
adding
look
extra
away.
insulation
Didn't
layers.
smile.
Designed
cry.
for compactness.
I just watch her go.
Eliminate
Outside the
cathedral
courthouse,
ceilings if
Amy
efficiency
hugged me.
matters to you.
It's over.
Lower
It's
ceilings
finally
and
over.
closable rooms
Yeah, I said.
concentrate heat
But was it?
where you
Karen
actually
would
are.
go to prison.
Implement
Serve her
thermal
time.
zoning strategies.
Eventually get out.
Heat your
And then
living
what?
spaces actively.
The money would come back
Allow
to Mom's
sleeping
estate.
areas to remain
I'd
cooler.
inherit it.
And
All of
think
it.
long-term value.
$1.36,
A house
$2
costing
million
$60,000 more to construct, but saving you
Karen would have to repay
$120,000 in
somehow.
utilities
But
and
Mom was still
maintenance
dead.
over 30
The family
years
was
is
still
the
broken.
intelligent investment.
David was still gone.
Modern building
and I was
codes
standing on the
obsess over
steps
our
of federal
values and
courthouse at
upfront
age
construction
59,
costs. They
having just
completely
watched my
ignore
sister get
resilience
sentenced to
and
4
life
years
cycle
in prison.
value.
Nobody
The
wanted
Scandinavian farmer in his
Not
13th
really.
century
We all just
cabin
lost
wasn't
different
primitive
things.
or backward.
I didn't go
He was
straight
a
home
master of
after
practical
sentencing.
physics.
I drove
He
to
understood
Fresno,
that heat
to the
requires
cemetery where
mass
we'd
for
finally
storage.
buried Mom
He knew air
in November
infiltration is the real
2023.
enemy.
After
not
the
cold
estate
itself.
was settled enough
He knew
to pay
radiant
for it.
heat
Her
outperforms
grave
forced air
was in the
fundamentally.
shade of an oak tree.
And he knew
Simple
working with
headstone.
natural principles
Eleanor
beats
Chun,
fighting them with
beloved
mechanical
mother.
systems.
1939
We exchanged
to
that
2022.
accumulated wisdom for
I sat on the
construction
grass
speed
next to
and
it.
cheap
We
fossil
got our
fuel
mom.
energy.
I said out loud.
Now that energy
Felt
is
stupid
expensive
talking
and
to a
climate
piece of
patterns
granite.
are becoming
Did
more
anyway.
extreme,
For
we're
years,
paying the price for that
she has to
trade.
pay back everything.
If you found this
It's
information
over.
valuable,
The
hit
wind
that like
moved
button
through
and
the oak
subscribe.
leaves.
We're
That was the
uncovering
only
forgotten
answer.
knowledge
I
that
don't know
the
if you'd
modern
be happy
construction
about
industry
this.
doesn't
Probably
want
not.
widely known.
You hated when we
The medieval
fought.
timber
Even
cabin
when we
wasn't
were kids.
accidental or
You
lucky.
always wanted us to
It
get along.
represented
Be a
centuries of
family. I
experimentation
pulled up some
and
weeds
refinement.
growing near the base
Structures
of the stone.
that
But
failed
we're not
harsh
a family
winters were
anymore.
abandoned
David's
and
gone.
forgotten.
Karen's going to
Designs
prison.
that
It's
succeeded
just
were
me now.
copied
Just
and
me.
improved.
My phone buzzed.
What survived was a
Text from
building
number I
system
didn't know.
so effective
We
it
need to talk.
protected families
Jessica.
through minus 40
I
degrees
stared at it.
Fahrenheit
Hadn't
winters
heard
with
from
zero
Jessica
electricity
since her
and
angry
zero
text
natural gas.
after the arraignment.
These people
Over a
worked
year ago,
14-hour days,
I texted back
built
about
civilizations,
what?
and
My
raised
mom.
families
What you did to
successfully.
her.
They
Meet
weren't
me.
weak
1
or
hour.
struggling.
Mom's
They were
house in
strong
Fresno.
because their homes
Mom's house
actually
was still
sheltered them
unsold.
instead of
Margaret
demanding
was tough.
constant energy
And the
and
house
money.
had bad energy
This
now.
knowledge
Everyone
wasn't
in
lost
Fresno
forever.
knew what happened
It was
there.
simply
Hard
buried
to sell
under
a house
marketing
where
hype
someone
and
died
short-term
and their
profit
daughter
thinking.
robbed them.
Every
I didn't
time
want
you
to
build
meet
with
Jessica.
thermal mass,
Didn't want
seal
another
air leaks
confrontation.
properly, and
But
use
maybe it was
radiant heating,
necessary.
you're
Maybe we
reviving that
both
wisdom.
needed to say things.
Wisdom that kept
I
people
drove to the
alive
house.
and comfortable
Got there
when
first.
the world was
Sat in my
unforgiving.
car waiting.
Wisdom
Jessica
that still
pulled up
works
15
today.
minutes later.
Drop your comments
She looked
below about your
different than at the
experiences with
funeral.
winter power
Harder,
outages.
thinner.
Have
Her
you
hair
tested your
was
home's
darker.
thermal resilience?
She walked up to the porch
Share
where I
your
was sitting.
story, and
Thanks for
let's
coming,
learn from each
she
other.
said.
And
Not
if you
warm,
want to dive
not
deeper into
cold,
these building principles,
flat.
check
What
out
do
the
you want,
resources
Jessica?
I've linked below.
To understand
This is
why you
knowledge
destroyed
worth
my
spreading.
mother. I didn't
Knowledge
destroy
that
your
could
mother.
save lives
Your mother
and
destroyed
fortunes.
herself.
Knowledge
She made
that builds
mistakes.
true resilience
She needed
into
help.
your home.
Not prison.
Thanks for watching,
I stood up.
and I'll see
She
you in the
stole
next one.
$438,000
We've lost something
from our
critical
dying
in
grandmother.
modern construction.
Laughed about
Back
it.
in
Called her easy
1869,
to steal from.
engineers
That's
studied
not a
the Hedel
mistake.
Stave Church
That's a
in
crime.
Norway during
She
a
was
record-breaking
desperate.
winter.
No, she
The
wasn't.
temperature
The
outside had
forensic
dropped to
accountant
minus
proved
35
that.
degrees
She was
Fahrenheit.
making good money.
Snow
She stole
covered
because she
everything for
wanted
miles.
to. Because
Winds
she
tore
felt
through the
entitled.
mountains with enough
Jessica's
power to
face
destroy
twisted.
any modern
You don't know
tent.
what it was like
But
for her.
inside this
Growing
timber
up in your
church
shadow.
constructed in
Perfect
1150
Michael,
without any
the hero
heating system,
firefighter.
without insulation,
Mom always compared
and without
herself
modern
to you.
windows,
Always felt
the
like she
temperature
wasn't
remained
good
at
enough.
48
That's
degrees
not my fault.
Fahrenheit.
Isn't it?
No
You could have
fire
helped
was
her.
lit.
Could have been
No
kinder.
energy was being
Could have.
consumed.
Could have
The
what?
building itself,
Let her steal
constructed
from
from
Grandma
dense
without
timber using
consequences?
forgotten techniques,
That's not kindness.
maintained thermal
That's
stability.
enabling.
Now think
Jessica
about a
looked
typical
away.
American home
She's
today.
my mom.
Turn off
She's
your
all I
heating
have.
when it's
And
10
there
degrees
was
Fahrenheit
the real
outside.
issue.
In just
Jessica
4
was
hours,
30 years
your
old.
indoor temperature
failed
plummets
jobs.
below 40
Living in
degrees
her mom's
Fahrenheit.
condo before
Within
it was
8
foreclosed.
hours, you're approaching
No real
freezing.
friends.
After
No partner.
18 hours,
Her whole
you
identity
risk frozen
was being
pipes
Karen's
and
daughter.
structural damage.
And now Karen was
the
gone.
house becomes
Jessica,
dangerous.
I'm sorry
What
this
knowledge
happened.
did
I
ancient
really
builders
am.
possess
But your
that we've
mom made
abandoned?
choices.
Across the
Bad
Nordic
choices.
mountains,
And
hundreds of
choices
timber
have
structures from the
consequences.
12th to
She's going to
16th
prison for
centuries
4
remain
years.
intact today.
She stole
These buildings have lasted through
$438,000
centuries of
from a
punishment.
dying woman.
They've
That woman
withstood
was my
winters that
grandmother,
would
too.
destroy a
You think I don't
contemporary
care?
frame house
You think
in
this
mere
doesn't
weeks.
hurt me?
They
Then why are
accomplished
you
this
defending
using
her?
3 fundamental
Because she's my
principles
mother.
completely absent
Jessica's
from modern building
voice
codes.
cracked.
Thermal
Because
mass
despite
storage,
everything,
complete air
despite
sealing,
all
and
her
heating
mistakes,
systems
she's
designed
still my
around
mom.
energy
And
storage
you took her
rather
away
than
from me.
constant fuel burning.
Karen took herself
These
away.
weren't separate
I
tricks.
just made sure she
They worked
faced
together
justice.
as one integrated
Justice.
system.
Jessica
Pure physics
laughed
applied
bitterly.
correctly,
Is that what you call
working
this?
alongside
You got your
natural
money.
forces instead
Grandma's
of fighting
money.
them.
Almost
Today's
$2 million.
construction fights against
And my
basic
mom gets 4
thermodynamics.
years in prison
We
and a
combat
debt
cold
she'll
with
never be
endless
able to
energy
pay.
input,
That's not
and
justice.
we're failing badly.
That's revenge.
Before we continue,
If I wanted revenge,
leave a comment
I would
below.
have pushed for more.
Have you
The
experienced
DA
a winter
could have
power
filed
outage?
additional charges.
How long did your
I
home
could have
retain
fought
heat?
for a longer
2
sentence.
hours, 8
I didn't.
hours?
I just
Or
wanted her to
was it
face
freezing within
consequences
minutes?
for what she did.
Share your
Jessica
story, because
shook her
what
head.
comes next artifacts
You know what's
will
funny?
transform your
Grandma would
understanding
have
of modern
forgiven her.
buildings.
Grandma
Let's go
forgave
back
everyone.
to 2012.
She would have been heartbroken that you
Researchers
sent her
at the
daughter
Technical
to
University of
prison.
Norway
That hit
conducted
hard,
a fascinating
because it might be
test.
true.
They
Maybe,
used two
I said,
identical-sized
but Mom
structures,
also deserved
each approximately
to have her wishes
400
honored.
square feet.
She worked 40 years
Structure
for
1
that
was an
money.
authentic
She wanted
medieval
it
timber
split
cabin
fairly.
built to
She wanted her
13th century
end-of-life care paid
specifications.
for legitimately.
Solid timber
Not
logs
stolen.
measuring 11
You
inches
think you're
in
the hero
diameter,
of this story.
hand-fitted
No,
with precision
I don't.
joinery.
I think we all
Zero
lost.
modern
Your
insulation.
mom lost her freedom.
No plastic barriers.
I lost my sister.
No synthetic
You lost your
materials
mom.
whatsoever.
Grandma lost her dignity.
Structure 2
There are no
was a
heroes
contemporary
here. Jessica sat
prefabricated
down on the
dwelling
porch
built
steps.
to current strict
She looked
energy
exhausted.
regulations.
What am I supposed
Heavy
to do now?
insulation rated
She asked
are
quietly.
23.
What do you mean?
Multiple
I am
vapor
Chijiste.
barriers.
I have no
Triple pane
degree,
windows.
no career.
On any
I was
building
living with my
inspector's
mom.
checklist,
Now she's gone.
the modern
The
structure
condo's
dominated
foreclosed.
completely.
I have nowhere
Both
to
sat
go.
in the same
No
location.
money. Nothing.
External temperature.
I sat down next to her.
Minus 12
too
degrees
close,
Fahrenheit.
but close enough.
Both were warmed
You have
to a
options.
comfortable 70
You're young.
degrees
You
Fahrenheit.
can go back to school.
Then
Get
researchers
training.
shut down all
Build
heating.
something.
The
With what
contemporary
money?
house dropped
I thought
to
about
32
that.
degrees
About the
Fahrenheit in
$1.8
just 7
million
hours. The
sitting
timber
in Mom's
cabin,
estate.
after
Money that
48
was
hours,
technically mine now.
internal temperature
I'll help
held
you, I
at
said.
56
The words
degrees
came out
Fahrenheit.
before I thought them
After
through.
72
Jessica
hours,
looked at me.
3 complete days
What?
with
I'll give
zero
you
heat input,
$20,000.
it still
Enough
measured
to get an
45
apartment.
degrees
Go
Fahrenheit,
to community college.
safely above
Get
freezing.
some training.
The modern
Start
building had
fresh.
become a
Why would you do
potentially
that?
lethal freezer,
Because you're
while
family.
the ancient cabin
Despite
remained
everything,
completely
you're
habitable.
still family.
How is
And
this
because
possible?
Mom would have wanted me
A
to
typical
help.
engineer
Not your
today
mom,
would call this
but
result
you
impossible.
didn't steal from Grandma.
The timber
You
cabins
didn't
are
commit
value
fraud.
sits around
You're
9.
just collateral
The
damage in
contemporary
someone
house
else's
boasts
war.
are
Jessica's
23.
eyes
Higher
filled
our
with
value
tears.
equals superior
I don't deserve
insulation by
that.
definition.
Maybe not.
The modern
but I'm
house
offering
should
anyway.
dominate this test,
One
right?
condition, you
But
get therapy.
our value only
Real
accounts
therapy.
for heat
You
transfer
deal with whatever
under
made
steady
you
conditions.
think your mom's behavior
It completely
was acceptable.
disregards
You build
thermal
a
mass.
real life.
And
Not
thermal
one dependent
mass
on someone
changes
else.
everything
Can you do that?
fundamentally.
She
An
nodded.
11-inch
I
thick
can
wall
try.
of old-growth
That's all
spruce
anyone can do.
weighs
We sat there
approximately
for a while.
75
Not
pounds per
talking,
linear foot.
just sitting.
Wood possesses
Finally,
exceptional
Jessica
specific
said,
heat capacity,
I'm sorry.
allowing
For
it to
what?
store
For the
tremendous
text.
amounts of
After
thermal
the
energy.
arraignment.
When
For
you heat
blaming
the
you.
cabin,
You were right.
the timber
Mom
absorbs
did
that
this to
warmth
herself.
deep into its
I just-
cellular structure.
I didn't want to see
When
it.
heating stops,
It's hard to see people
the wood
we
releases
love
this
clearly
stored energy
sometimes.
gradually over
Will you visit
many
her?
hours
In
and
prison.
even days.
I don't know.
In the
Maybe.
contemporary house,
Someday.
walls
Not yet.
consist of thin
She asked
drywall,
about you.
plastic
In her
sheeting,
letters. Want to
fiberglass
know if you're
insulation,
okay.
and
That
exterior
surprised me.
cladding.
She writes
Total
you
wall assembly
every
weight,
week. Long
maybe
letters.
8 pounds per
talking
linear
about her
foot.
therapy.
There's
her
essentially
regrets,
zero mass available
how she's trying to
for heat
understand
storage.
why she
Insulation
did what she
slows
did.
heat escape.
Jessica wiped
Sure,
her eyes.
but it stores
She's different
absolutely
now.
nothing.
Or maybe she's
The
finally
moment your
being
furnace
honest.
cycles off,
I don't know.
warmth in
People
the
can
air
change.
escapes through microscopic
Sometimes,
gaps and
if they want
thermal
it badly
bridges.
enough.
Because
Do you
stick
think
frame
you'll ever
construction
forgive her?
has no
I
thermal
thought about
mass.
that.
There's
Really
no
thought about
energy
it.
reservoir
I
to
don't know. Tired.
sustain.
Tired of fighting.
Ancient builders
Tired of
grasped
being
this
angry.
principle intuitively.
Tired of this whole nightmare.
They selected trees
Maybe
aged
someday,
70 to
but not
90
today.
years minimum.
Jessica nodded.
Trees growing
Fair
in
enough.
harsh
We
northern
exchanged
climates
numbers.
develop
I
extremely
transferred the
slowly.
$20,000
Growth
to her
rings
account
pack
that
incredibly
afternoon.
tight,
She cried when
sometimes
notification
exceeding
came
120
through.
rings per
Send me a
inch.
text.
This
Thank you.
creates
I won't
extraordinarily
waste
dense,
this.
heavy
I hope
timber.
she wouldn't.
1
But I also
cubic
knew
foot
some
of
people can't be
old-growth
saved.
spruce weighs
Can't be
over
fixed.
40 pounds.
They have to save
Modern
themselves.
fast-growth pine,
A week later,
26
the
pounds.
estate finally
That
closed.
density matters
All debts paid.
enormously.
All legal
Greater
fees
mass
settled.
equals
The
greater
house
storage
sold for
capacity.
$620,000.
More storage means
Less than it was
extended thermal
worth,
lag time.
But the best we
It
could
requires
do given
10
its
to
history.
16 hours
The
for
final
external
total,
cold to penetrate an 11-inch dense timber wall.
$1,982,000.
By that time,
Almost $2 million.
you've typically restarted your heat
Mom's
source.
life savings.
The cabin functions like
legacy,
a
which
massive
she
thermal
worked 40
battery,
years to build.
eliminating
I set
temperature
aside
fluctuations.
$100,000
But
for
mass
Karen's
alone isn't
restitution
sufficient.
payments.
You also
The
need
court would
complete air
garnish
sealing.
it from her wages
This
when she
reveals
got
the
out,
second
but I wanted
crucial
to make sure
secret.
the money was there.
Despite all
Another
our advanced house wraps
$50,000
and
went to
ceiling
Mom's
tapes,
church.
contemporary
She would have wanted
homes
that.
leak like
$20,000
seeds.
to
Lower
Jessica.
door testing reveals
rest,
the average modern house has cumulative air leakage
$1,812,000
equivalent to leaving
went
a
into my
22
account.
by
I stared at the
18-inch
number.
window completely
More money
open.
than I'd ever
This
imagined
isn't hyperbole.
having. More than I
Combine
needed.
every gap
More than I
around
wanted.
electrical boxes,
Honestly,
trim
it
work,
felt
and
heavy,
window frames.
like blood money.
That's the
even
hole
though
you're
it was
trying
legally
to heat.
mine.
When it's
Even though
0
I'd
degrees
fought for it.
outside,
Even though
frigid
Mom
air
wanted me
pours
to
through
have
continuously.
It felt wrong.
Your heating
Linda
system
found me
isn't battling
sitting
the
at the
walls.
kitchen table that
It's
night,
fighting an
staring at the
invisible
bank
open
statement.
portal.
You
The
okay?
timber cabins
She
eliminated
asked.
this problem.
I don't know what to do with it.
Logs were
The
joined
money.
using
Yeah,
scribe-fit joinery.
It's too much.
Each
I
log
don't
was
need this
individually
much.
shaped
We already
to
have our
perfectly
house
match
paid
the log
off.
beneath it.
We have my
This
pension.
process
We're We're
took
fine.
weeks of skilled
Linda
labor.
sat down across
A
from me.
single room
What
could
would make
require
you feel
months to
better about
complete.
it? I
But
thought
the
about
outcome
Mom,
was a wall
about her
assembly
life,
with
about what
virtually
mattered
no
to her.
air
She
infiltration.
cared about
Then
family,
came the chinking
about
process.
helping people,
Gaps
about
were
making
filled
sure
with
the next
sphagnum moss
generation
glands.
had
This
opportunities.
moss absorbs up
So
to
do
25
that.
times
Set up
its weight in
scholarships.
moisture.
Help
When
people who need
dried
it.
and
Make the
compressed,
money
it
mean
expands into
something.
every
That
tiny
felt
crack.
right. Over the next
this,
month, I
builders
worked with a
applied a
financial
mixture of
advisor,
clay blended
set up a
with animal
scholarship
fiber,
fund, at
typically
Fresno
wool
State
or goat
for
hair.
first-generation
The clay
college
hardens to
students.
create an airtight seal while the fiber acts
Another
like reinforcement to prevent
$200,000
cracking.
to a cancer
It's a
research
breathing
foundation.
system. Water vapor can
$100,000
migrate
to the
through,
firefighters'
but air
benevolent
movement
fund
cannot
that
occur.
had helped my family
When scientists
Dad
test
died.
these
The rest
500-year-old
stayed
structures
invested.
today,
For emergencies,
many achieve
for
or
the future,
surpass modern
for whatever
passive
came
house
next.
airtightness
And
standards.
slowly,
A dwelling
very
constructed with
slowly,
hand
the weight
tools
lifted.
and natural moss
The money wasn't the
outperforms a
point
suburban
anymore.
home built
It never
with
had been.
engineered
The
composites.
point was keeping Mom's
the
memory
third critical
alive.
element
Making
is
sure
the
her
heating strategy
40 years
itself.
of work meant
This is
something.
where things get
Making sure her
truly
legacy
fascinating.
was more
We
than just
typically
a
imagine
court
old
case about
cabins with
betrayal.
open fireplaces.
She was more than what
but
Karen
open
did to her.
fireplaces are
She was more
thermal
than a victim
catastrophes.
in a fraud
They
trial.
pull enormous
She was
volumes
Eleanor
of heated
Chun,
indoor air
mother,
and
worker,
blast it straight up
fighter,
the chimney.
someone who
A
built
big open
something
fire
from
can
nothing
actually
and
cool a
wanted to
house
leave
by
her kids
creating
better
negative air
off than she'd
pressure.
been.
Instead,
And now,
Scandinavians
finally,
used masonry
her wishes
heaters
were being
called
honored.
K-Cloven or
September
soapstone stoves.
2025.
These are
1 year
substantial
after
units
Karen
constructed
went
from
to prison.
stone or
I
brick,
was 60 years
weighing
old,
multiple tons.
retired, living
You
the
burn
life
an
I'd
intense,
planned before Mom
fast
got
fire
sick.
once or
Linda
twice daily.
and I traveled. Saw the
Combustion
Grand
is
Canyon.
complete and
Spent
efficient.
2 weeks
But
in
instead
Hawaii.
of exhaust
Normal
gases
retired
exiting
people
directly,
stuff.
they
But
wind
nothing
through a
felt
maze
normal.
of channels within
Jessica
the
called me
stone
once a
mass.
month.
Heat
She kept her
transfers to the
promise.
stone before
Got into
gases
community
reach the
college.
chimney. By the
Studying
time
dental
smoke
hygiene.
exits outside,
Had her own
it's
apartment.
barely
A
above
part-time
ambient
job.
temperature.
She was
All
building
that
something
thermal
real.
energy is
I saw Mom
captured in the
last
stone.
week. She told me
This
on one of
stone
those
mass
calls.
then radiates
She looks
warmth
better,
steadily
healthier.
for 10 to 16
The prison
hours.
has good therapy
The surface
programs.
temperature stays
She's
around
different, Uncle
135 to
Uncle Mike.
170
She'd
degrees
never called
Fahrenheit.
me that before.
Warm
Different
enough
how?
to feel comfortable,
Honest.
but
She
safe
talks about
for
what she
direct
did.
contact.
Doesn't make
You
excuses
can sit
anymore.
against it.
She
You
asked
can
about
even
you again.
sleep beside it.
What did you tell her?
The heat
That
is
you're okay.
radiant,
That you're
meaning
living
it
your life.
warms objects
That
and
maybe
bodies,
someday you'll
not
visit.
merely the air.
Would I? I didn't
Radiant
know.
heating
Part of
creates
me wanted to
comfort
see
at
her.
lower air
Wanted to
temperatures.
know if she really had changed.
You feel comfortable
If
in
prison had
58
broken
degrees
through
Fahrenheit
whatever
air
wall
if you're
she'd
near
built
a
around her
155
conscience.
degrees
But another
Fahrenheit
part of
stone
me
mass.
was still angry.
A contemporary
Still
forced
hurt.
air system
Still
must
grieving
heat
for the
air to
family
70
we'd lost.
degrees Fahrenheit
Linda thought
to
I should
achieve
go.
the same
For
comfort
closure,
level.
she
That
said.
represents
Not for
massive
her.
energy waste.
For you. In
A
October
Swedish study
2025,
from 2005
I drove
reconstructed
to
a
FCI
traditional
Dublin.
log dwelling
2-hour
and
drive from
tested
Sacramento.
it at minus
The whole way
18
there,
degrees Fahrenheit.
almost turned around
A
dozen
single
times.
90-minute fire
The prison
using
was gray.
approximately 40
Everything was
pounds
gray.
of wood maintained
Gray walls,
interior temperatures
gray
above
uniforms,
57 degrees
gray
Fahrenheit
faces.
for over
They brought
14
Karen
hours.
to the visiting
Fuel
room.
consumption was
She looked
roughly
older,
1/12
much older.
what a modern
Her
home
hair
with gas
was
heating would
completely gray
consume
now.
in the same time
She
frame.
lost weight.
And
Had
this
lines
was
around her
achieved
eyes
without
I didn't
any
remember.
modern insulation
We sat
technology.
across from each other
Just
at a
thermal
metal
mass,
table.
air
Didn't
sealing,
speak for
and
30
radiant
seconds.
heat working together.
Just looked at each other.
Interior layout
Thank you
also
for
played a
comfort.
She
massive
said
role
fine.
in efficiency.
Jessica
Scandinavian
said you wanted
cabins
to.
rejected
I
open
did.
concept
You
design.
don't.
शुक्रिया याद
Modern
She
open
folded her
floor
hands.
plans are
They were
efficiency
shaking
nightmares.
slightly. I
Heated
wanted to
air
tell you I'm
rises
sorry.
and gets trapped
In
in high
person,
ceilings
not
while
through
occupants
lawyers
freeze
or
at
letters
floor level.
or Jessica.
Medieval cabins
Face to
featured
face.
low ceilings,
Okay.
typically just
sorry for what I did to
6.5
Mom.
feet high.
For stealing
Rooms
from
were
her.
small and
betraying
separated
her
by
trust.
solid doors.
For making her
This
final months
concentrated
about
heat,
money
where people
instead of
actually
Alhamdulillah,
spent
सब
time.
कुछ
Her
fit फाट
voice
The central
cracked.
room for
I'm
cooking
sorry for
and
destroying
daily
our
activities
family.
stayed
For
For
warmer.
hurting you.
Sleeping
being the
rooms were
person I
cooler,
was.
which didn't matter
Was.
because people
I'm
slept
trying
under
not to be
heavy
that
wool
person
blankets
anymore.
and furs.
Therapy helps.
This thermal zoning
Having time to think
strategy
helps.
drastically reduced
Understanding
heating
why
requirements.
I did what I did helps.
There was zero need
Why
to
did you do it?
maintain and use
She looked down.
spaces at 68
Jealousy,
degrees Fahrenheit.
insecurity.
We've
a lifetime
completely
of
discarded
feeling
this
like I
logic
wasn't
in
good
our
enough.
obsession with
Like I didn't
expansive
matter.
great rooms.
Like you were the golden child.
Then consider
and
the
I was
foundation
screw-up.
approach.
So when
Many
I had
modern
access to
American
something you
homes
didn't,
sit on
Mom's
slab-on-grade
money,
concrete.
I took it. Not because I
Concrete
needed
functions
it,
as a
because it
thermal
made me
bridge.
feel
It
powerful.
pulls heat from your living
like I had
space
something you
and dumps
wanted.
it straight
I didn't
into
want the money,
frozen
Karen.
ground.
I wanted Mom to be
Scandinavian
okay.
cabins were
I know
elevated
that.
on stone
I didn't know
piers
it
that
then.
lifted
Or I
timber
didn't let
off
myself
the earth.
know.
This
sat in
created an
silence for
air
a
gap
moment.
functioning as
Do you forgive me?
insulation.
She asked.
Floors
I
consisted
thought
of
about
thick
that.
planks,
Really thought
often
about
double
it.
layered with
I don't know.
sawdust or
I
moss
said
packed
honestly.
between.
Part of me
This
does.
eliminated the
Part of
thermal
me
bridge
understands you
completely.
were broken pain and
No
hurt
heat bled
and
into the
dealing
ground
with things
below.
I didn't see.
Every
But
design
part of me
detail
is still angry,
focused on heat
still hurt,
retention.
still can't
So
believe
why
you
did
did
we
what you
abandon
did.
these
She
proven
nodded.
methods?
That's
Three
fair.
primary reasons:
I helped Jessica.
speed,
I told
cost,
her.
and cheap
Gave her
fossil
money
fuels.
to start over.
After World
She's
War
doing
II,
well.
we
Karen's
needed
eyes
millions of
filled with
houses
tears.
immediately.
Thank you.
Scribing
Thank you
logs
for
and
that.
hand-cutting
She told
joints
me.
required
It meant
months.
everything to
Stick
her.
framing with
To me.
dimensional
I
lumber
didn't do it for
and
you.
plywood
I
took
know.
only weeks.
But thank you anyway.
Labor costs were
We
high,
talked for another 20
so
minutes
materials needed to
about
be
nothing
inexpensive.
important. About
Thin
everything.
walls with bad
About how she
insulation
spent her
cost
days.
far less than solid
About her
timber.
cellmate who was
Then
teaching
came
her
the
Spanish.
energy revolution.
About the
During the
program she was in.
1950s and 60s,
When visiting hours
oil
ended,
and
we
natural
stood
gas
up.
were
Will you
incredibly
come back?
cheap.
She asked.
Who cared about
Maybe.
efficiency
I don't know.
when you could
Okay.
simply turn up
She
the
smiled
thermostat?
sadly.
We
I'll be
stopped
here.
designing for
How about 2
resilience
more years?
and started
As I walked
optimizing
to my
for
car,
lowest initial
I felt
cost.
lighter.
We
Not
created
forgiven,
houses on life
not
support,
healed, but
requiring
lighter.
constant
Some
energy
wounds
input.
never fully
Cut the
close.
supply, and
Some
they fail
betrayals
immediately.
leave
But energy
permanent
costs
scars.
have
But
skyrocketed.
maybe with time,
Power
they hurt
grids
less.
are becoming
Maybe
increasingly
they're
expensive.
25 now.
Homes are actually
3 years since
extremely
Mom died.
fragile.
2
Throughout
years
Europe,
since the trial.
particularly in
1
Germany,
year since
Austria,
Karen
and
went to prison.
Switzerland,
People
there's a
asked me if it was
significant
worth
movement
it.
returning to
Fighting
solid
Karen,
timber
taking
construction
her to
and
court,
mass timber
sending her
technology.
to prison.
This is an